The police officer looked at me with pity in his eyes and said, "Mr. Freeman, I am sorry, but your daughter took her own life." I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Officer, you have the wrong house. I have only one child, a son named Marcus, and he is very much alive." The officer shook his head and handed me a plastic bag containing a cheap burner phone and a silver cross necklace. He said, "She had your number saved as Dad. It was the only number in the phone. When they pulled back the sheet at the morgue, my legs gave out. It was not my daughter, but looking at her dead face broke my heart more than if it had been my own flesh and blood, because the woman lying on that cold steel table was supposed to be dead 5 years ago. And looking at the bruise on her neck, I knew one thing for certain. She did not kill herself. I am Ezekiel Freeman, but everyone calls me Zeke. I am 73 years old, and I spent 40 of those years working the docks in Baltimore. I know the sound of trouble. Trouble does not ring the doorbell at 2 in the morning. Trouble pounds on the wood like it is trying to break it down. When I heard that banging, I did not reach for my glasses. I reached for the baseball bat I keep next to my bed. My wife Coretta passed away 6 years ago, and since then, I sleep with one eye open. I made my way down the hallway, my joints popping with every step. The red and blue lights were flashing through the front window, painting my living room in violent colors. I opened the door chain just an inch. 2 officers stood there. One was young white and looked like he had barely started shaving. The other was older, looking tired. The young one spoke first. "Mr. Ezekiel Freeman." "Yes," I said, gripping the bat tighter. "Sir, we need you to come with us. It is about your daughter." I frowned. "I told you I do not have a daughter. My son Marcus lives in a gated community in the suburbs. If something happened to him, why are you here and not at his mansion?" The older officer stepped forward. "Sir, the ID on the deceased says Nia Freeman. The emergency contact is you. She was found in a motel room on the west side. Apparent suicide." The name hit me like a physical blow. Nia. The bat slipped from my hand and clattered onto the floor. Nia. It could not be. Nia was the little girl who grew up next door. The girl who used to sit on my porch and let Coretta braid her hair because her own mother was too high to care. Nia, who dated my son Marcus for 10 years before he left her for a rich politician's daughter. Nia, who disappeared 5 years ago without saying goodbye. I sat in the back of the police cruiser, watching the city pass by. It was raining, a cold, hard rain that washed the trash into the gutters but could not wash away the grime of this city. I tried to call Marcus. His phone went straight to voicemail. Of course it did. He was probably sleeping in silk sheets next to his perfect wife, Victoria, dreaming of stock markets and country clubs. He had forgotten Nia long ago, but I never did. Before I continue this story and tell you what I found on her body that the police missed, please let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to fight for the truth when everyone else wanted you to stay silent. The county morgue is a place that smells of chemicals and hopelessness. It is cold. Not just the temperature, but the feeling in the air. It seeps into your bones. The medical examiner was a short man with thick glasses who looked like he wanted to be anywhere else. He led me to a table in the center of the room. He looked at his clipboard. Jane Doe, identified tentatively as Nia Freeman. Cause of death appears to be an overdose of sleeping pills. We found an empty bottle next to the bed. He reached out and pulled down the zipper of the body bag. The sound was like a scream in the quiet room. Then he pulled back the sheet. I had to grab the edge of the table to keep from falling. It was her. It was really her. She looked older than I remembered. Her face was thin, gaunt. Her skin, which used to glow like polished copper, was now gray and dull. Her hair was chopped short and rough. But it was Nia. I would know that face anywhere. She had a small scar above her left eyebrow from when she fell off a bicycle when she was 7, and I patched her up because she was too scared to go home. "Is this your daughter?" the officer asked softly. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "In every way that matters, yes. She is my daughter." I reached out to touch her hand. Her fingers were cold, ice cold. I remembered how warm her hands used to be when she would bring me a cup of coffee on the porch and listen to my stories about the war. She was the only one who listened. Marcus always said my stories were boring. Nia would listen for hours. "Why did you leave, child?" I whispered. "Why did you run away?" The medical examiner sighed loudly, checking his watch. "Sir, if you have made a positive ID, we can wrap this up. It is an open and shut case. Junkie in a cheap motel. Happens every night in this city. I felt a flash of anger, hot and sharp. Do not call her that. She was a good girl. She went to church every Sunday. She sang in the choir. The examiner shrugged. People change. The toxicology report will confirm it, but the scene was clear. No signs of struggle. She took the pills and went to sleep. I looked at her again, really looked at her. My eyes might be old, but they are sharp. I spent years inspecting cargo containers for damage. I noticed things other people miss. I looked at her neck. There, under the collar of the cheap hospital gown they had put on her, was a mark. It was faint, a reddish-purple bruise right over her windpipe. It was small, roughly the size of a thumb. Wait, I said. What is that? I pointed to the bruise. The medical examiner glanced at it dismissively. Post-mortem lividity. Or maybe she bumped into something before she lay down. It is nothing. It is not nothing, I said, my voice rising. That is a bruise. Someone grabbed her. The young officer stepped in. Mr. Freeman, you are upset. We understand. But there is no evidence of foul play. The door was locked from the inside. I looked at Naya's face one last time. And then I saw the silver cross necklace the officer had given me earlier. It was in the bag on the counter. I picked it up. It was cheap metal, but I recognized it. I had given it to her for her 16th birthday. She had cried and told me it was the most beautiful thing she had ever owned. She told me she would never take it off because it reminded her that God was watching. Naya was a believer, a true believer. She believed that suicide was a mortal sin. She believed that no matter how hard life got, God had a plan. Even when Marcus broke her heart, even when she lost her job, even when her mother died of an overdose, Nia never stopped praying. She did not do this, I said firmly. I turned to the officers. This woman did not kill herself. She was murdered. The room went silent. The medical examiner looked at the police officer and rolled his eyes. Mr. Freeman, the officer said, his tone losing its pity and becoming annoyed. We know it is hard to accept, but facts are facts. I looked at the bruise again. It was not just a bruise, it was a fingerprint. Someone had pressed their thumb into her throat. Maybe not to strangle her, but to force her to open her mouth, to force the pills down. I leaned in closer to her face, and that is when I saw it, a tiny detail. Under her fingernails, on her right hand, there was something dark, a tiny speck of skin or fabric. She had fought back. I pointed it out. Look, under her nails. The medical examiner sighed and took a magnifying glass. He looked for a second, then pulled back. Just dirt. Look, sir, we are done here. You can make arrangements with a funeral home to pick up the body in the morning. They were dismissing me. Just another old black man in a city full of dead bodies. To them, Nia was a statistic, another addict who gave up. They wanted to close the file and go home to their warm beds. But I could not leave her, not again. I had let her go 5 years ago. I had let Marcus push her away because I thought he needed to focus on his career. I had stayed silent when he married Victoria because I thought it would give him a better life. My silence had cost Nia everything. I put my hand on her cold forehead. I promise you, child, I whispered. I will not let them bury the truth with you. As I walked out of the morgue, the sun was starting to come up over the city. The rain had stopped, but the streets were still wet and gray. I took the bag with her belongings, the cheap phone, the keys. I sat on the bench outside the morgue and took out her phone. It was a burner phone, the kind you buy at a convenience store for $20. The battery was almost dead. I pressed the power button. The screen flickered to life. It was locked, of course. But Naya was a creature of habit. I tried her birthday. Incorrect. I tried Marcus's birthday. Incorrect. Then I thought about the one date that meant something to both of us. The day Coretta died. Naya had held my hand through the entire funeral. I typed in the numbers. 0812. The phone unlocked. My heart hammered in my chest. I went straight to the photos. There were no selfies, no pictures of sunsets or food. There was only one album, and inside it was a video recorded just 2 hours before the police said she died. I pressed play. Naya's face filled the small, cracked screen. She was crying. She looked terrified. She was whispering as if someone was in the next room. Zeke, she whispered. If you are seeing this, it means I am gone. I am so sorry I stayed away. I had to. She threatened to kill him. Kill him. Who was him? The camera shook. Nia looked over her shoulder, then back at the lens. I have hidden him, Zeke. He is safe for now. But you have to find him before she does. The key to the locker is in my shoe. Please, Zeke. He has your eyes. He has Marcus's eyes." The video ended. I sat there on the cold bench, my breath coming in short gasps. He has Marcus's eyes. Nia did not just leave. She ran, and she did not run alone. I looked in the plastic bag again. I dumped everything out. The cross, the phone, and a single dirty sneaker. The police must have missed the other one, or left it in the room. I grabbed the shoe and ripped out the sole. There it was, a small, rusty key with a number stamped on it, 402. I stood up. The pain in my knees was gone. The exhaustion was gone. All I felt was a fire burning in my chest, a fire that had been out for a long time. I am not just a retired dock worker. I am a father, and now it seems I am a grandfather. The police said case closed. I say the war has just begun. The address the police gave me was in a part of town where taxi drivers refuse to go after dark, and streetlights are just decoration because the bulbs have been shot out long ago. I drove my old pickup truck, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. It was not fear, it was rage. A cold, hard rage that sat in my gut like a stone. The police had handed me a plastic bag with a few cheap items and told me to go home. They said the case was closed. They said there was nothing left to see at the scene. But I knew better. In 40 years on the docks, I learned that the most important things are always hidden in the corners that nobody wants to look at. I parked in front of the building. It was a crumbling brick structure that smelled of damp concrete and neglect. The front door had no lock, just a gaping hole where the handle used to be. I walked up the stairs to the 4th floor. The hallway smelled of boiled cabbage and old cigarettes. I found apartment 402. The police seal was a joke. Just a single strip of yellow tape stuck lazily across the door frame. The door itself was unlocked. I pushed it open and stepped inside. The air in the room was stale and heavy. It smelled of fear. The police report said suicide. They said she took pills and went to sleep. But looking around this room, I knew that was a lie. You do not tear your own house apart before you kill yourself. The place had been tossed. And I do not mean just messy. I mean searched, systematically, brutally. The mattress was slashed open, its stuffing spilling out like guts. The drawers were pulled out and dumped on the floor. The cheap drywall had holes punched in it. Someone had been looking for something, and they had been angry that they could not find it. I stepped over a pile of shattered plates. My boots crunched on the glass. I tried to imagine Naya in this place. The last time I saw her, she was wearing a bright yellow dress, laughing at a barbecue in my backyard. Now she was gone, and this broken room was all that was left of her life. I felt a sharp pain in my chest. I should have checked on her. I should have found her sooner. I walked to the small kitchenette. The cupboard doors were ripped off their hinges. A box of cereal was spilled across the counter, and then I saw it. A small detail the police missed because they did not care. On the linoleum floor near the refrigerator, there was a smear of dried mud. It was shaped like a boot print, a large, heavy boot. Naya wore size 6 sneakers. This print was at least a size 12. Men with size 12 boots had been here. Men who did not care about noise or damage. I moved into the bedroom. This was where they found her. The bed was stripped bare. I looked at the nightstand. There was a Bible. I picked it up. It was old and worn, the cover held together with tape. I opened it. On the inside cover in her handwriting it said, "For when the darkness comes, trust in the light." I put the Bible in my pocket. That was when I heard it. It was a sound so faint I almost missed it. A scratch, like a mouse in the walls. I froze. I held my breath. The silence in the room was heavy. Then I heard it again. A soft whimper. It was coming from the closet. The closet door was closed, but the wood was splintered around the handle, as if someone had tried to force it and failed. Or maybe they just didn't try hard enough. I stepped closer. My hand went to the pocket where I kept my folding knife. "Is anyone there?" I called out. My voice sounded loud and harsh in the empty room. No answer. Just a sudden silence that was even louder than the noise. I reached out and gripped the handle. It was stuck. I pulled harder, putting my shoulder into it. The wood groaned and gave way. The door swung open. The closet was full of old coats and boxes. At first I saw nothing, just shadows and dust. I was about to turn away, thinking my old ears were playing tricks on me. But then I saw a movement near the floor. Behind a stack of plastic bins, something shifted. I knelt down, my knees protesting with a loud pop. I moved the coats aside, And there he was, a little boy. He could not be more than 4 years old. He was curled up into a ball so tight he looked like a bundle of rags. He was wearing pajamas with cartoon rocket ships on them, but they were covered in dust. He was shaking, not just shivering, but shaking violently, his whole body vibrating with terror. He looked up at me, and I felt the air leave my lungs. He did not scream. He did not cry. He just stared at me with wide, terrified eyes. He had his hands clamped over his mouth as if someone had taught him exactly how to be quiet, as if his life depended on silence.
"Hey there, little man," I whispered, making my voice as soft as I could. "I am not going to hurt you." He pressed himself further back into the corner, trying to merge with the wall. He looked at my hand, checking for a weapon. This was a child who knew what violence looked like. That broke my heart more than seeing Naya on the slab. I sat down on the floor, right there in the dust. I kept my distance. "I am Zeke," I said. "I was a friend of Naya. I knew your mom." At the mention of her name, his eyes filled with tears, but he still did not make a sound. He pointed a trembling finger toward the bed where his mother had died. "Yes," I said, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I know. I am so sorry. But the bad men are gone now. It is just me." I remembered I had a peppermint candy in my pocket. I always keep them for when my blood sugar drops. I took it out and unwrapped it slowly, letting him see my hands were empty of anything dangerous. I slid the candy across the floor toward him. He looked at the candy, then back at me. Hunger won over fear. He snatched the candy and put it in his mouth. "What is your name, son?" I asked. He chewed for a moment, then whispered so quietly I had to lean in to hear. "Leo." "Leo," I repeated. "That is a strong name, like a lion." I held out my hand. "Come on, Leo. We cannot stay here. It is not safe." He hesitated. He looked at the open door of the apartment as if he expected monsters to come walking in. And maybe they would. Whoever killed Nia did not find what they were looking for. And suddenly I realized, with a sick feeling in my stomach, what they were looking for was not a thing. It was him. They did not tear the room apart for money. They tore it apart looking for the boy. Nia did not just die. She died protecting him. She must have hidden him in the closet and locked it or blocked it somehow before they got to her. She gave her life to buy him silence. "Come here, Leo," I said more urgently. "We have to go. Now." He crawled out from behind the boxes. As he moved into the light coming from the window, I saw his face clearly for the first time. The shadows fell away and I found myself staring at a ghost. I stopped breathing. The room spun. It was not just that he was a handsome boy. It was the shape of his nose, the set of his jaw, and above all it was his eyes. They were a distinctive shade of amber brown with flecks of gold. Not Nia's eyes, not my eyes. They were Marcus's eyes. I would know those eyes anywhere. I looked into them the day Marcus was born. I looked into them when he graduated college. I looked into them when he lied to me about his gambling debts. This boy, this terrified little boy hiding in a closet in a crack den, he was my grandson. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Nia had been raising my grandson alone in poverty, while Marcus lived in a mansion 20 miles away. Did Marcus know? Did he abandon them? Or did Nia hide the boy from him too? Leo looked up at me, waiting for me to do something. He reached out and grabbed my pinky finger with his small hand. His grip was surprisingly strong. "Are you a bad man?" he asked. Tears pricked my eyes. I have been called many things in my life. Stubborn, hard, difficult. But looking at this boy, I knew I had a new title. Protector. "No, Leo," I said, picking him up. He was light, too light. I could feel his ribs through his pajamas. "I am not a bad man. I am your grandfather, and nobody is ever going to hurt you again." I stood up, holding him against my chest. He smelled of dust and old fear, but under that was the smell of a child, just innocent and sweet. He buried his face in my neck, and for the first time since I walked in, he started to cry. Soft, quiet sobs that shook his small frame. I wrapped my coat around him, covering his face so nobody would see him as we left. I walked out of that apartment, and I did not look back. The police said it was suicide. The coroner said it was an overdose. But I knew the truth now. You do not hide a child in a closet if you plan to kill yourself. You hide a child because you know the wolves are at the door. Nia was murdered.
She was murdered because of who this boy was. She was murdered because someone wanted to erase her and this child from the face of the earth. As I walked down the stairs, listening to the creak of the wood under my boots, I made a promise. Not to God, not to the law, but to the ghost of the woman who died saving my blood. I promise you, Nia, I am going to burn their world down. I am going to find out who sent those men. I am going to find out what Marcus knows. And if my own son is involved in this, may God have mercy on him, because I will not. I reached the truck and strapped Leo into the passenger seat, using the seatbelt meant for a grown man. He looked small and lost. "Where are we going?" he asked, his voice trembling again. "We are going to ask some questions, Leo, and we are going to get some answers." I started the engine. The old truck roared to life. I drove away from the building, watching it disappear in the rearview mirror. I had gone there looking for clues. I left with a war on my hands. But before I could even get to the main road, I saw something that made my blood run cold. A black SUV with tinted windows was parked down the street. As I passed it, the engine turned on. The headlights flared in the gloom. They were watching. They had been watching the apartment, waiting for someone to come back, waiting to see if the boy was still inside. And now they were following me. I gripped the steering wheel and pressed the gas pedal. "Hold on, Leo," I said grimly. The hunt was on. But they did not know who they were messing with. They thought they were chasing an old man and a helpless child. They did not know they had just woken up a sleeping dragon. I drove from the crumbling brick tenements of the west side to the polished iron gates of Emerald Hills, and it felt like I was traveling between two different planets. I had left little Leo with Saul, an old army medic I trusted with my life. I told Saul to keep the doors locked and the blinds drawn until I came back. I could not bring the boy here. Not yet. I was walking into the lion's den, and you do not bring a lamb when you go to face the predators. My son Marcus lives in a house that looks like something out of a magazine. It has white pillars and a driveway long enough to land a plane on. It is a place that screams money, but whispers loneliness. The security guard at the gate hesitated when he saw my battered pickup truck. He picked up the phone, probably calling the house to ask if the old black man in the rusted Ford was actually allowed inside. The gate opened slowly, as if it was doing me a favor. I parked next to Marcus's silver Mercedes. My truck looked like a dirty bruise on the pristine pavement. I took a deep breath. I checked my pocket to make sure the audio recorder I had bought at the pawn shop on the way over was turned on. I am old, but I am not stupid. In a war, words are weapons, and I intended to capture every bullet they fired. The front door was opened by a housekeeper who looked at me without smiling. She led me to the main living room. The ceilings were 20 feet high. The air conditioning was set so low it made the sweat on my back turn to ice. And there he was. Marcus stood by the fireplace. He was wearing a suit that cost more than I made in a year on the docks. He held a crystal tumbler of amber liquid in his hand. He looked like success. He looked like the American dream. But when he turned to face me, I saw the truth. His eyes were red. His hands were shaking just enough to make the ice in his glass tinkle against the sides. He knew. Somehow, he already knew. "Dad," he said, and his voice was thin and brittle, like dry leaves. "What are you doing here? You should have called. Victoria is resting. She has a migraine." I stood there in my work boots, leaving faint, dusty footprints on his white marble floor. I looked at my son, the boy I had taught to ride a bike, the boy I had taught to fish. Somewhere along the way he had lost his spine. "I did not come to see your wife, Marcus," I said, keeping my voice low and steady. "I came to tell you about Naya." At the sound of her name, Marcus flinched. It was a small movement, like he had been stung by a bee. He took a large gulp of his drink. "Naya," he repeated, trying to sound casual but failing miserably. "I have not heard that name in years. What about her? Did she ask you for money again? Because I told you, Dad. She is just trying to manipulate you." I walked closer to him. I wanted to smell the fear on him. "She is dead, Marcus." The glass slipped from his fingers. It did not fall in slow motion like in the movies. It fell fast and hard. It hit the marble floor and shattered into 1,000 diamond shards. The scotch splashed onto his expensive Italian leather shoes. Marcus stared at the broken glass. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. His face went pale, turning a sickly shade of gray. "Dead," he whispered. "Yes," I said, The police found her in a motel room. They say it was suicide. Marcus looked up at me, and for a second I saw genuine pain in his eyes. I saw the ghost of the boy who had once loved Nia, before money and ambition roiled his soul. He took a step toward me. Suicide, he stammered. No, she would not. She promised me she would stay away. She promised she would keep quiet if I just... He stopped. He realized he had said too much. If you just... What, Marcus? I asked, stepping on a piece of broken glass, grinding it into the floor. If you just paid her off. If you just threatened her. I did not threaten her, he said, his voice rising in panic. I just wanted to protect my family. You do not understand, Dad. Victoria... Before he could finish, a voice cut through the air like a razor blade. Marcus, darling, why is there broken glass on my floor? I looked up toward the grand staircase. Victoria was descending. She did not walk. She glided. She was wearing a silk robe that looked like flowing water. Her blonde hair was pulled back in a perfect tight bun. She looked like an ice queen, cold, beautiful, and deadly. She reached the bottom of the stairs and looked at the mess on the floor, then at me. Her blue eyes had zero warmth. They were flat and hard like a shark's eyes. Hello, Ezekiel, she said. To what do we owe the pleasure of this intrusion? I looked at her, and I felt a chill run down my spine. This woman was dangerous. Marcus was weak, but Victoria was something else entirely. She was the daughter of a senator. She grew up knowing that rules were things that applied to other people. I came to tell Marcus that Nia is dead, I said. Victoria did not blink. She did not gasp. She did not pretend to be shocked. She simply walked over to the bar and poured herself a glass of water. Is she indeed? Victoria said calmly. Well, I suppose that is tragic in a poetic sort of way. Tragic? I repeated, my blood starting to boil. A young woman is dead. A woman who was part of this family before you ever showed up. Victoria laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. Part of this family. Oh, Ezekiel, you always were sentimental. She was a mistake from Marcus's past, a loose end that refused to be tied up. She turned to face us, leaning against the bar. She looked at Marcus, who was still staring at the floor, shaking. Clean yourself up, Marcus, she snapped. You look pathetic. Then she looked at me. So she finally did it, she said. I wondered how long it would last. We have been paying her $5,000 a month for 5 years to stay invisible. I suppose she finally realized that no amount of money fixes a broken spirit. I clenched my fists. My fingernails dug into my palms. You paid her to leave, I said. We paid her for silence, Victoria corrected. There is a difference. Your son has a reputation to maintain, Ezekiel. My father has a reputation. We could not have a drug addict ex-girlfriend surfacing every time Marcus closed the deal. She was not a drug addict, I shouted. My voice echoed off the high ceilings. She was a good woman, and she did not kill herself. Victoria's expression changed. The boredom vanished, replaced by something sharper. Warning. Careful, Ezekiel, she said softly. I stepped forward. I saw the bruises on her neck, I said. I saw the signs of a struggle. Someone made sure she took those pills. Someone wanted to close the account permanently. Victoria put her glass down. She walked up to me until she was just inches away. She smelled of expensive perfume and rot. Let me give you some advice, ex-doc foreman, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. You are an old man, living on a pension that barely covers your heating bill. You have a nice, quiet life. Do not ruin it by playing detective. Are you threatening me? I asked. I am educating you, she smiled, but it did not reach her eyes. The police have closed the case. The coroner has signed the certificate. Nia is dead and buried. The debt is settled. If you go digging up graves, you might just fall into one yourself. She reached out and brushed a piece of lint off my old canvas jacket. Go home, Ezekiel. Watch your baseball games. Drink your cheap beer. Forget Nia ever existed. It is better for everyone, especially for you. I looked at Marcus. He was looking at his wife with pure terror. He was not grieving for Nia anymore. He was terrified of Victoria. He was a hostage in his own home. I looked back at Victoria. You think money buys everything? I said. I know it does, she replied. Now get out of my house before I call security and have you dragged out for trespassing. I turned around and walked to the door. I wanted to smash everything in that room. I wanted to tear down their white pillars and their silk curtains. But I kept walking. As I reached the door, I stopped and looked back. "You missed a spot," I said, pointing to the broken glass near Marcus's feet. I walked out into the heat of the afternoon. The heavy oak door slammed shut behind me. I got into my truck and sat there for a moment, my hands gripping the wheel. I was shaking, not from fear, but from the adrenaline of being that close to pure evil. She admitted it. She admitted paying Naya. She admitted wanting her gone. And she threatened me. But she made one mistake, one fatal mistake. She did not mention the boy. She talked about closing the account. She talked about loose ends. But she never said a word about a child. This meant one of two things. Either she truly did not know Leo existed, which seemed impossible given her resources, or she knew exactly who Leo was, and she thought she had already taken care of him too. She thought the men she sent to the apartment had finished the job. She thought Leo was dead or gone. I pulled the recorder out of my pocket and pressed stop. I had her voice. I had her threat. It was not enough to convict her of murder yet, but it was a start. I looked at the mansion one last time. It looked like a fortress, but every fortress has a crack in the wall. Victoria thought she had won. She thought she had scared the old man away. She did not know that the old man had nothing left to lose. I put the truck in gear. I had to get back to Leo. I had to keep him safe. Because as long as that boy was alive, Victoria's victory was a lie. And when she finds out he is still breathing, she is going to unleash hell. Good, I thought as I drove past the security gate. I have been through hell before. I know the terrain. Let them come. For one night, I allowed myself to believe that the hard part was over. I took Leo back to my small house on 4th Street. It is not a mansion like the one Marcus lives in. The paint is peeling on the porch, and the floorboards groan when you step on them. But it is a home. It is filled with the smell of old books and the lemon wax Coretta used to polish the furniture. I made Leo a grilled cheese sandwich. He ate it like he had not seen food in days. Watching him eat, I felt a strange warmth in my chest that I had not felt since Marcus was a boy. Leo sat at my kitchen table, his legs swinging back and forth, not quite touching the floor. He looked at the pictures on the mantelpiece. He pointed to a photo of me in my army uniform. "Is that you, Grandpa?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "That was a long time ago, before my knees creaked and my hair turned white." "Were you a hero?" he asked with wide eyes. I choked on my coffee. "No, son," I said. "I was just a man doing a job. The real heroes are the ones who keep going when the world tries to stop them." I put him to sleep in the guest room. It used to be Marcus's room. I sat in the rocking chair in the hallway for hours listening to him breathe. For the first time in 5 years since Nia disappeared, I felt like I had a purpose. I was going to raise this boy. I was going to teach him how to fish. I was going to teach him how to be a man who stands by his word, unlike his father. But I was naive. I thought I was fighting a fair fight. I thought that because I had the truth on my side, I would win. I forgot that in this country, truth is expensive, and I was running on empty pockets. The knock came at 8 in the morning. It was not the frantic banging of trouble. It was the sharp, rhythmic knock of authority, the kind of knock that does not ask for permission to enter, but demands it. I opened the door. Standing on my porch was a woman in a gray suit, holding a clipboard. Behind her stood 2 police officers. Their hands were resting near their belts, not on their guns yet, but close enough to send a message. "Mr. Ezekiel Freeman," the woman asked. Her voice was flat, professional, cold. "I am him," I said, stepping out onto the porch and pulling the door shut behind me. I did not want Leo to wake up and see this. "My name is Ms. Sterling from Child Protective Services. We received a report regarding the welfare of a minor currently in your custody." I felt my stomach drop. A report. It had not even been 24 hours. "What report?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "The boy is my grandson. His mother died yesterday. I am his next of kin." Ms. Sterling looked at her clipboard. She did not look at me. "According to the report filed this morning, you have a history of violent outbursts and undocumented dementia. The report also states that the home environment is unsanitary and that you keep unsecured firearms within reach of a child." I laughed. It was a bitter, angry sound. Violent outbursts, dementia. These were the words Victoria had used. These were the lies she had planted. "That is a lie," I said. "My house is clean. My gun is locked in a safe in the basement, and my mind is as sharp as a razor. You are being used, lady. Miss Sterling finally looked up. Her eyes were tired. She had probably heard every excuse in the book. Mr. Freeman, we are not here to debate. We are here to execute an emergency removal order. We need to take the child into protective custody, pending a full investigation. Over my dead body, I said. The two police officers stepped forward. One of them, the taller one with a buzz cut, put his hand on his taser. Sir, step aside, the officer said. Do not make this harder than it needs to be. Harder, I shouted. My voice cracked. You are taking a grieving child away from the only family he has left. You are taking him to a system that does not care about him. Who called you? Was it a woman named Victoria? Tell me. We cannot disclose the source of the report, Ms. Sterling said. Now please bring the child out, or the officers will enter the premises. I stood there, blocking the door. I am a 73-year-old man. My back hurts when it rains. My hands shake when I am tired. But in that moment, I felt like I could fight the whole world. I wanted to swing. I wanted to smash their clipboard and scream at the injustice of it all. But then I heard the door creak open behind me. Grandpa. I turned around. Leo was standing there rubbing sleep from his eyes. He was holding the old teddy bear I had found in the closet. He looked at me, and then he looked at the police officers. He saw the uniforms. He saw the stern faces, and he started to scream. It was not a cry. It was a shriek of pure terror. He thought the bad men had found him. He thought they were going to hurt him, like they hurt his mother. He ran to me and wrapped his arms around my leg. No, he screamed. No, no, no. Leo, it is okay, I said, bending down, trying to shield him. Ms. Sterling stepped forward. Grab the child, she said to the officers. One of the officers reached out and pulled Leo off my leg. Leo kicked and thrashed. He bit the officer's hand. Let him go, I roared. I grabbed the officer's arm. That was the mistake. In a second, I was shoved back against the wall. My head hit the siding with a crack. The other officer pointed his taser at my chest. Back off, old man, he shouted, or you are going to jail for assaulting an officer. I froze. The red laser dot was dancing on my chest, right over my heart. If I fought, they would arrest me. If I got arrested, I would be in a cell and I could not help Leo. I would be a felon. Victoria would win. She wanted me to fight. She wanted me to prove her right. She wanted me to be the angry, violent black man she described in her report. I raised my hands. My whole body was shaking with rage. It is okay, Leo, I yelled over his screams as they dragged him down the steps. It is okay. Go with them. I will come for you, I promise. Leo reached out his hand toward me. Grandpa, help me. Grandpa. His voice broke. They shoved him into the back of the sedan. Miss Sterling got in beside him. The door slammed shut, severing the connection between us. I stood on the porch, gasping for air. The police officer lowered his taser. You are lucky we are in a good mood today, the officer said. Next time you touch a cop, you are going out in a body bag. Get your act together, Pops. They got into their cruiser and drove away. I watched the taillights disappear down the street. The silence that followed was deafening. My house, which had felt so warm just moments ago, now felt like a tomb. I sank down onto the porch steps. I put my head in my hands. This is how they do it. This is how they break you. They do not need to burn a cross on your lawn anymore. They just use the phone. They use the law. They use the system that was built to protect them and crush people like me. Victoria did not just want the child gone. She wanted to humiliate me. She wanted to show me that no matter how hard I tried, I was powerless against her influence. She could snap her fingers, and the police would come to do her dirty work. I looked at my hands. They were rough, scarred hands. Hands that had built ships. Hands that had held a dying wife. Hands that had just failed to hold on to a scared little boy. I felt a tear run down my cheek. I wiped it away angrily. Cry later, I told myself. I stood up. My head was throbbing where I hit the wall. Victoria thought this was the checkmate. She thought taking Leo away would break my spirit. She thought I would sit here and drink myself to death, or end up in that nursing home she threatened me with. But she forgot one thing. She forgot that you never corner a wounded animal. I went back inside. I walked to the kitchen. The half-eaten grilled cheese sandwich was still on the table. I picked up the plate. I did not throw it. I washed it. I dried it. I put it away. Methodical. Calm. I went to the basement. I unlocked the safe. It was dusty. I took out a small metal box. Inside was a stack of cash I had been saving for my funeral. $5,000. It was not enough to hire a high-powered lawyer. It was not enough to bribe a judge. But it was enough to buy information. And it was enough to fuel the truck for a long drive. I am not going to play by their rules anymore. I tried to be the good citizen. I tried to trust the badge. And look where it got me. My grandson is in a cage somewhere, crying my name. I took the cash. I took my old army jacket. Ms. Sterling said there would be an investigation. She said there would be a hearing. That takes weeks, months. I do not have months. Leo does not have months. I am going to get him back, and I am not going to ask for permission. I picked up the phone and dialed a number I had not called in 20 years. Hello? A gruff voice answered on the third ring. Saul? I said. It is Zeke, the voice said, sounding surprised. I thought you were dead. Not yet, I said. But I need a favor. I need you to find someone. A woman named Ms. Sterling. I need to know where she lives. I need to know where she took the boy. There was a pause on the line. Then Saul spoke. Is this trouble, Zeke? The kind of trouble you cannot walk away from, I said. Good, Saul said. I was getting bored. I hung up the phone. I looked at the empty spot where Leo had slept. Hold on, little lion. Grandpa is coming. And I am bringing the storm with me. I did not go back to the empty house. I did not sit and mourn the silence where a child's laughter should have been. I got in my truck and drove straight to the glass tower in the financial district where my son plays at being a master of the universe. The security guard in the lobby tried to stop me. He saw an old black man in a faded army jacket and work boots, and he saw a threat. He was right. I was a threat, but not the kind he could stop with a radio call. I walked past him, my eyes fixed on the elevator banks. When he reached for my arm, I gave him a look that I used to give the new hires on the docks when they thought they could slack off. It is a look that says I have survived wars and riots, and grief do not test me today. He let go. I rode the elevator to the 42nd floor. My ears popped as the city shrank beneath me. This was Marcus's world, a world of air conditioning and artificial light, where men destroyed lives with signatures instead of fists. The receptionist, a young woman with a headset, tried to tell me Mr. Freeman was in a meeting. I told her I was the meeting. I pushed open the heavy mahogany doors to his corner office and walked inside. Marcus was not in a meeting. He was sitting behind his massive desk, his head in his hands. He looked up when I slammed the door shut. His face was pale, his eyes bloodshot. He looked like a man who had been running a marathon in his sleep. "Dad," he whispered, "you cannot be here. If she sees you." I did not let him finish. I marched across the room and slammed my hand down on his desk. The impact made his expensive fountain pens jump. "They took him, Marcus. They came to my house and they dragged your son away like he was a criminal. And you let it happen. You knew about it." Marcus flinched. He stood up, but he could not look me in the eye. He walked to the window, looking out at the skyline. "I had no choice, Dad," he said, his voice trembling. "You do not understand what she is capable of." "Make me understand," I shouted. "Tell me why a grown man lets his wife murder his ex-girlfriend and kidnap his child. Tell me what she has on you, Marcus, because it must be something worth your soul." Marcus turned around. Tears were streaming down his face. It was pathetic. I wanted to shake him. I wanted to hug him. I wanted to beat him. "She has the ledgers, Dad." The room went silent. The hum of the computer server in the corner seemed to get louder. "What ledgers?" I asked, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. Marcus sank back into his chair. 2 years ago, I made a mistake. I gambled on a futures trade that went bad. I lost $3 million of the company's money. I thought I could fix it. I moved some funds around. I cooked the books, just for a few months, until I could make it back. I felt a wave of nausea. Embezzlement. My son was a thief. "And Victoria found out," I said. Marcus nodded. "She found the discrepancies. She traced the transfers. She has everything, Dad. Copies of the wire transfers, the fake invoices, my digital signature. She keeps them in a safe deposit box. If I ever try to leave her, if I ever try to fight her, she releases them to the SEC and the FBI. I would go to prison for 20 years, Dad. I would lose everything." I looked at him with disgust. You are already in prison, Marcus. You built the bars yourself out of greed and fear. So you let her kill Nia to save your own skin. I did not know she would kill her, Marcus sobbed. I swear. Victoria said she would just pay her to leave town. She said she would handle it. And the boy? I asked. Did you know about Leo? Marcus wiped his nose with a silk handkerchief. Nia sent me a picture a year ago. Just one. I wanted to see him, Dad. I really did. But Victoria said if I ever acknowledged him, she would destroy me. She said a bastard child would ruin my political prospects. I stared at him. I realized then that the son I raised was gone. This man in the suit was a stranger, a weak, selfish stranger. The door behind me opened. I did not have to turn around to know who it was. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. The smell of expensive perfume filled the air. Touching family reunion, Victoria said. I turned slowly. She was wearing a white business suit, pristine and sharp. She held a blue folder in her hand. She walked into the room like she owned the air we breathed. She probably thought she did. Get out of my sight, Victoria, I said, before I forget that I was raised not to hit a woman. She laughed softly. Such fire, Ezekiel. I can see where Marcus gets his temper, even if he lacks your backbone. She walked over to the desk and threw the blue folder down in front of me. It landed with a heavy thud. What is this? I asked. A solution, she said, for everyone. I looked at the folder. I did not open it. I waited for her to speak. We have a problem, Ezekiel, she said, pacing the room like a predator. You are making noise. You are stirring up dust in a room that needs to remain clean. The incident with CPS this morning was unfortunate, but necessary. You proved you are unfit to care for a child. I am more fit than a father who denies his existence, and a stepmother who orders hits on women, I spat back. Victoria ignored me. She tapped the folder with a manicured fingernail. Inside that folder is a contract, a generous offer, really. I listened. I needed to know the enemy's terms. Here is the deal, she said, counting off on her fingers. Number 1, you voluntarily check yourself into the Whispering Pines Assisted Living Facility. It is a very nice place, top-rated memory care unit. We have already paid for the first year. She was trying to lock me away. She was trying to label me as senile, so anything I said in the future would be dismissed as the ramblings of a crazy old man. Number 2, she continued, you sign over power of attorney for your house to Marcus. We will sell it. The proceeds will go towards your care. She wanted to take my home, the house I bought with 40 years of sweat, the house where Coretta died. And number 3, she said, her eyes locking onto mine. You sign a non-disclosure agreement. You agree that you never had a daughter named Nia. You agree that the boy Leo is a distant relative you are unable to care for. You agree to never speak to the press, the police, or anyone about this family again. And if I sign this, I asked, my voice steady, what happens to Leo? Victoria smiled. It was the smile of a snake about to strike. Leo will be taken care of. We have arranged for a lovely adoption agency to handle his case. There is a family in Switzerland, very private, wealthy. He will have a new name, a new life, and a new start, far away from here. Switzerland. She meant exile. She meant erasing him. She wanted to send my grandson halfway across the world, so she would never have to look at his face and see Marcus's eyes. And if I refuse, I asked. Victoria stopped pacing. She leaned against the desk right next to Marcus, who was staring at his shoes. If you refuse Ezekiel, then the narrative changes. The CPS investigation will find evidence of abuse, not just neglect, but physical abuse. We have witnesses ready to testify that they saw you hitting the boy. You are lying, I growled. Am I? She asked. Who will they believe? A wealthy philanthropist like me, or a senile old dock worker with a history of anger issues? You will be arrested. You will die in prison. And the boy? Well, the state system is so overcrowded. Kids get lost in the shuffle every day. He might end up in a group home. He might end up on the street. Who knows? She paused, letting the threat hang in the air. Sign the paper, Ezekiel. Go to the nursing home. Live out your days in comfort, watching TV and eating pudding. Let us handle the mess. I looked at Marcus. He was shaking his head slightly, mouthing the word, please. He wanted me to sign. He wanted the easy way out. He wanted to bury his sins so he could keep his country club membership. I looked at the contract. I reached out and picked it up. Victoria's eyes lit up. She thought she had won. She thought every man had a price and every man had a breaking point. I opened the folder. I looked at the legal jargon, the words that would strip me of my freedom, my home, and my honor. I looked at Victoria. "You think you are powerful?" I said quietly. "You think because you have money and connections you are a god. But you are just a bully, Victoria, and bullies always forget one thing." I ripped the contract in half. The sound of the tearing paper was loud in the silent office. Victoria's smile vanished. I ripped it again and again, until it was just confetti in my hands. I threw the pieces in her face. "I would rather die standing than live kneeling before a woman like you," I said. My voice was not a shout. It was a rumble deep in my chest. "You can take my house. You can throw me in jail. You can lie about me to the world. But I will never sign your papers. And I will never let you sell that boy like he is a piece of cargo." Victoria's face twisted into a mask of pure fury. "You stupid old fool," she hissed. "You have just signed your own death warrant." "Maybe," I said, "but at least I will die a man, which is more than I can say for him." I pointed at Marcus. He flinched as if I had struck him. I turned around and walked to the door. "You have 24 hours, Ezekiel," Victoria screamed after me. "After that, I take the gloves off." I stopped at the door. "Keep your gloves on," I said without looking back. "You are going to need them to wipe away your tears when I am done with you." I walked out of the office. I walked past the terrified receptionist. I walked into the elevator. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding like a hammer against my ribs. I had just declared war on people who could crush me with a phone call. I had no plan. I had no backup. I had $5,000 in my pocket and a burning fire in my gut. But as the elevator descended, I felt something else. I felt light. For 5 years I had been walking around like a ghost waiting to die. Now I was alive. They want to play dirty. Fine, I know dirty. I worked the docks when the mob ran the unions. I know how to fight in the mud. I walked out of the building and into the busy street. The sun was shining, but it felt cold. "I need a team," I whispered to myself. "I cannot do this alone." I thought about the guys from the old unit, the ones who were still above ground, Crazy Saul, Locksmith Larry, and Big T, who used to run numbers but now ran a soul food joint. We are old, we are tired, but we are not dead yet. I pulled out my burner phone. Time to get the band back together. I woke up the next morning with a plan. A soldier always has a plan. I had $5,000 in cash in my pocket, but I knew that in a war against people like Victoria, cash burns fast. I needed my savings. I needed the retirement fund I had built nickel by nickel over 40 years of sweating on the docks. It was not a fortune. It was just enough to keep the lights on and maybe pay a private investigator to find where they had taken Leo. I drove to the bank on Main Street, the same bank where I had opened my first account when I came back from Vietnam, the same bank where I knew the manager's name and he knew mine, or at least I thought he did. I walked up to the teller window. It was a young girl I did not recognize. I slid my card across the counter and asked to make a withdrawal. She typed on her keyboard, then she stopped. She frowned. She typed again, harder this time, as if hitting the keys would change the numbers on the screen. "Sir," she said without looking up, "there is a problem with your account." "What kind of problem?" I asked. "I checked the balance yesterday. The money is there." She picked up the phone and whispered something. 2 minutes later, the branch manager walked over. It was Mr. Henderson. I had fixed his car engine 3 summers ago for free because he was going through a divorce. He looked at me, but his eyes were different. They were guarded, fearful. "Mr. Freeman," he said, his voice stiff, "I am afraid we have had to freeze your assets." "Freeze them," I repeated. My voice echoed in the quiet lobby. "On whose authority?" "On the authority of the federal government," Mr. Henderson said, loud enough for the people in line behind me to hear. "We received a notification this morning of suspicious activity regarding large transfers to offshore accounts. Your accounts are flagged for potential money laundering." I laughed. It was a loud bark of disbelief. Money laundering. "Mr. Henderson, look at me. I drive a 20-year-old truck. I buy my clothes at the surplus store. Do I look like I am laundering money?" "It is out of my hands, Zeke," he said, using my first name but without the warmth. You will have to contact the fraud department. Until then, you cannot access a single cent." He pushed my debit card back across the counter. He did not hand it to me. He slid it like it was contaminated. I looked around the lobby. People were staring. A woman pulled her purse closer to her chest. An old man shook his head. They saw a criminal. They did not see the man who had lived in this town for 50 years. Victoria works fast. She did not just block my money. She flagged me as a felon. She knew I could not fight a federal investigation. By the time I cleared my name, Leo would be in Switzerland, and I would be in the ground. I grabbed my card and walked out. The automatic doors hissed shut behind me like an airlock sealing a tomb. I needed coffee. I needed to think. I walked 2 blocks down to Sal's diner. This was my spot. Every Tuesday and Thursday for 10 years, I sat in the corner booth and ordered black coffee and 2 eggs over easy. Sal knew my order before I sat down. The waitress, Mary, always asked about my hip. I pushed open the door. The bell chimed. The diner was busy. The smell of bacon and grease hung in the air. I walked toward my booth. But there was a cone on the table, reserved. I looked at the counter. Sal was there wiping down a perfectly clean surface. He saw me. He looked down. "Hey, Sal," I called out. "Table's open, right?" Sal did not look up. He kept wiping the counter. The circular motion of his rag was aggressive, nervous. "Zeke," he said, his voice low, "you cannot eat here today." I stopped. The chatter in the diner died down. Forks stopped scraping against plates. "Excuse me," I said. "We have the right to refuse service." Sal recited the words like he had rehearsed them. "Please leave. We do not want any trouble." "Trouble?" I asked, walking up to the counter. "I have been eating here since before you owned this place. What is going on, Sal?" Sal finally looked at me. His face was red. "It is all over the neighborhood, Zeke. The flyers, the posts online." "What posts?" I demanded. Mary, the waitress, stepped forward. She had tears in her eyes. She held up her phone. "Look," she whispered. I took the phone. It was a social media post on the Community Watch page. There was a picture of me, a mugshot from 40 years ago, when I got arrested for a protest that turned violent. And underneath it, the caption read in bold red letters, "Warning, local resident Ezekiel Freeman under investigation for child endangerment and abuse. Keep your children away. Highly dangerous." My hands shook. The phone almost slipped from my grip. Abuse. She had done it. She had played the card that no man can defend against. She had branded me a monster. I looked at Sal. "You believe this?" I asked. "You know me. You know I would never hurt a child." Sal took the phone back. "I have grandkids, Zeke. I cannot take the risk. Even if it is not true, the reputation, bad for business. Just go." I looked around the diner. These were my neighbors, people I had loaned tools to, people I had shoveled snow for. Now they looked at me with disgust. A mother in the back booth covered her daughter's eyes. I felt a coldness spread through my chest that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. It was the coldness of total isolation. I walked out of the diner. The bell chimed again, but this time it sounded like a funeral toll. I walked down the street. It was a walk of shame. I saw Mrs. Gable watering her flowers. She was 80 years old. I used to carry her groceries. When she saw me coming, she dropped her hose and hurried inside, slamming her front door and locking the deadbolt. The click of the lock was loud in the morning air. I saw the mailman. He crossed the street to avoid walking past me. I was invisible, and yet I was the only thing anyone could see. I made it back to my truck. I sat inside and locked the doors. It was a small metal box of safety in a world that had suddenly turned hostile. My phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. It read simply, "It is lonely at the bottom, isn't it? Sign the papers." I threw the phone against the dashboard. It cracked, but didn't break. I drove home, or what used to be my home. Now it felt like a prison. I parked in the driveway. Someone had thrown eggs at my front door. The yellow yolks were drying on the wood, attracting flies. On the sidewalk in chalk, someone had written, "Pervert." I stood there staring at the word. It burned into my retinas. This is what it feels like to be erased. Victoria did not need to kill me. She just needed to kill my name. She stripped away my history, my honor, and my community. She left me naked in the town square. I went inside and closed the blinds. The house was dark. I sat in my armchair, the leather cold against my back. The silence was heavy. Usually, I liked the quiet, but this was different. This was the silence of a man who has been cast out. I thought about calling Marcus, but what was the point? He was probably the one who paid for the bots to spread the lies online. I thought about calling the police to report the vandalism, but they were the ones who dragged Leo away. They were on her payroll. I was alone, completely and utterly alone. I looked at the empty space on the floor where Leo had played with his blocks just yesterday. I closed my eyes, and I could still hear his scream as they took him. They want me to break. They want me to look at this empty house and this destroyed reputation and say it is too much. They want me to crawl into that nursing home and hide. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the only thing I had left, the audio recorder. I pressed play. I listened to Victoria's voice again, arrogant, confident, evil. You are an old man living on a pension. Forget Nia ever existed. I listened to it over and over. I let her voice fill the empty room. I let her hate fuel me. She made a mistake, a strategic error. She isolated me. She cut my ties to the community. She took away my distractions. She took away my comfort. When you take everything away from a man, you leave him with nothing to lose. And a man with nothing to lose is the most dangerous creature on God's green earth. I stood up. I went to the kitchen and found a bucket of soapy water. I went outside. I started scrubbing the eggs off the door. I scrubbed until my knuckles bled. I took the hose and washed the chalk off the sidewalk. Mrs. Gable watched me from her window. I saw her curtain twitch. I did not look away. I stared right at her window until she let the curtain fall. I am not going anywhere, I whispered. I went back inside. I packed a bag, not clothes, tools. If I cannot use the bank, I will use cash. If I cannot use the law, I will use the street. If I cannot use my friends, I will find new ones. The kind of friends who do not care about reputation. The kind of friends who live in the shadows, where Victoria is afraid to go. I am Zeke Freeman. I survived the jungle in '68. I survived the riots in '92. I survived the death of my wife. I will survive this. And when I come back, I am not coming back as a neighbor or a friend. I am coming back as a judgment. The place where Saul lives is not on any map that the tourists see. It is in the basement of a television repair shop that went out of business 10 years ago, but somehow the lights are still on. Saul was a communications officer in our unit back in '68. He could fix a radio with a piece of gum and a copper wire, while mortar shells were falling around us. Now he fixes other things, things that people want to keep hidden. I walked down the concrete steps. The air smelled of ozone and stale cigar smoke. I knocked 3 times on the steel door, a rhythm only the guys from the unit knew. The slot slid open. 2 dark eyes peered out from behind thick glasses. Zeke, the voice rasped. You look like hell warmed over. I feel like it too, Saul, I said. Open the door. The bolt slid back with a heavy clank. I stepped inside. The room was a maze of wires, monitors, and computer towers that hummed like a beehive. Saul sat in his wheelchair, a relic from a shrapnel wound that never healed right. He spun around to face me. I heard about the boy, Saul said. Word travels fast on the wire. They took him. They did, I said, sitting on a plastic crate. And they froze my money, and they ruined my name. But they forgot one thing. I pulled Naya's burner phone out of my pocket. It was cracked and the battery was dead, but it was the only weapon I had. They forgot to take this. Saul took the phone. He turned it over in his grease-stained hands. A cheap prepaid. Throwaway tech. What do you think is on here, Zeke? The truth, I said, or at least enough of it to start a fire. Saul wheeled himself over to his main desk. He plugged the phone into a mess of cables. He started typing. His fingers flew across the keyboard faster than a man half his age. It is encrypted, he muttered. Not the phone itself, that is garbage, but the files. Someone put a military-grade lock on a $20 phone. That is interesting. Can you open it? I asked. Saul laughed, a dry, wheezing sound. Is the Pope Catholic? Give me 10 minutes. I sat there in the dim light, watching the numbers scroll on his screens. I thought about Nia, a girl who worked 2 jobs just to put food on the table. Where did she get the money or the knowledge to encrypt a phone like that? She didn't, which meant someone else did it for her, or someone gave her the phone already secured. Got it, Saul said. The screen flashed green. Folders appeared. I rolled my crate closer. What do we have? Saul clicked on a folder labeled simply tax. It was bank statements, but not from a regular bank. These were digital receipts from a cryptocurrency exchange, monthly transfers. Look at the amounts, Saul whistled. 5,000, 5,000, 10,000. Zeke, this girl was on a payroll. Who was paying her? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. Saul traced the digital footprint. It is routed through shell companies, a holding firm in Delaware, a LLC in Panama. But look at the origin point. It traces back to a private trust, the V&M Foundation. Victoria and Marcus, I whispered. So Victoria was telling the truth about one thing. She was paying Nia. But why pay an ex-girlfriend $10,000 a month just to stay away? That is hush money. But hush money for what? Check the emails, I said. Saul opened the next folder. There were hundreds of emails, but they were not from Marcus. They were from Victoria. I started reading. My blood ran cold. Payment sent. Remember the terms. No contact, no photos. If you step foot in the city, the deal is void. We increase the amount this month. Buy the boy something nice. Just keep him hidden. She was managing Nia. She was not just paying her off, she was keeping her on a leash. Then I saw it. An email with an attachment sent 3 years ago. The subject line was simply, "The problem." Open that one, I said. Saul clicked it. A PDF document opened up. It was a legal document, a divorce decree. I squinted at the screen. It was a filing for divorce between Marcus Freeman and Nia Freeman. Wait a minute, Saul said. I thought you said they were just dating. I thought so too, I said. My heart started hammering against my ribs. Marcus told me they broke up. He never told me they got married. I looked at the bottom of the document. There was Marcus's signature, shaky but legible. But the line for Nia's signature was blank, and stamped across the front of the document in red ink were the words, "Rejected by court. Filing incomplete." I stared at the screen. The room seemed to spin. They never got divorced. I looked at Saul. He looked back at me, his mouth hanging open. "Zeke," he said softly, "if this document was rejected, that means they are still legally married." "Yes," I said. My voice sounded far away. Nia was his wife, his legal wife. And that means, Saul continued doing the math that I had already done in my head, that means his marriage to Victoria is a lie. It is void. It is bigamy. I sat back on the crate. The magnitude of it hit me like a freight train. Marcus is a bigamist. In the eyes of the law, he is still married to Nia. When he married Victoria in that lavish ceremony with the senators and the governors, it was all a show. It was a crime. But why does this matter so much? I asked. Why pay millions of dollars to hide this? Why not just get a divorce quietly? Saul started typing again. He pulled up a news article from 5 years ago. It was about Victoria's father, the senator. Senator Blackwell establishes billion-dollar family trust. Strict morality clause included for all beneficiaries. Saul read the fine print. Zeke, look at this. The trust stipulates that any beneficiary who engages in scandalous behavior, including criminal acts or illegitimate marriages, is automatically disinherited, and the spouse of said beneficiary gets nothing. I understood now. I finally understood the fear in Marcus's eyes and the desperation in Victoria's actions. It was not just about reputation. It was about money. Hundreds of millions of dollars. If the world found out that Marcus was a bigamist, Victoria would lose her inheritance. Her father, the senator who built his career on family values, would cut her off. The mansion, the cars, the power, it would all vanish overnight. Nia held the key to their destruction. She was the legal wife. She could have walked into court at any time and claimed half of everything Marcus owned. She could have exposed Victoria as a mistress living in a glass house. But she didn't. Why didn't she? I asked aloud. She had the power to ruin them. Why did she take the scraps they threw her and hide in a slum? Because of the boy, Saul said quietly. I looked at him. Look at the date on the email, Saul pointed. It was sent 1 month after Leo was born. They threatened him, I said, realizing the horror of it. They told her that if she tried to claim her place as the wife, they would hurt the boy. So she took the money. She took the deal. She lived in poverty and shame to keep her son safe. And now she is dead, I said, because the boy was getting older. Because maybe he was starting to look too much like Marcus. Because maybe Nia threatened to renegotiate. Or maybe, Saul said grimly, maybe they just decided it was cheaper to kill a widow than to keep paying a wife.
I felt a tear run down my cheek. I wiped it away. Nia was a hero. She sacrificed her dignity, her freedom, and finally her life to protect my grandson. And Marcus knew. He knew he was still married to her. He stood at that altar with Victoria and lied to God and the world. I stood up. I felt a surge of energy that made my hands shake. "Print it," I said. "Print everything." Saul hit the print button. The printer whirred to life, spitting out pages of evidence. "This is it, Zeke," Saul said, handing me the stack of warm paper. "This is the silver bullet, but be careful. If they were willing to kill Nia to keep this secret, what do you think they will do to you?" I folded the papers and put them inside my jacket, right next to my heart. "Let them try," I said. "They are playing checkers, thinking they are kings. But I just flipped the board. I have leverage now, real leverage. I am not just a grandfather fighting for custody. I am the father-in-law of the legal wife. Technically, I have more right to Marcus's assets than Victoria does." I turned to leave. Zeke Saul called out. I stopped at the door. "You are going to need more than paper," he said. "You are going to need muscle. Victoria has private security, ex-military, mercenaries." "I know," I said. "That is why my next stop isn't the police station." "Where are you going?" Saul asked. "I am going to see Big T," I said. Saul smiled. His gold tooth glinted in the monitor light. "Tell that big ugly ox I said hello." "And Zeke?" "Yeah, give them hell." I walked out into the alley. The sun had set. The city was dark. But for the first time in days I saw a path forward. I had the truth. Marcus was a criminal. Victoria was a fraud. And Leo, my little Leo, was the legitimate heir to a fortune they were trying to steal. I got into my truck. The engine sputtered but caught. "I am coming for you, Victoria. And I am not bringing a lawyer. I am bringing the past you tried to bury." The digital files Saul found were the map, but I still needed the treasure. A judge might look at a computer printout and call it a forgery, especially when the lawyers on the other side cost $1,000 an hour. But a physical document with a raised seal and wet ink signatures is harder to make disappear. I knew Nia. She was a girl who kept everything, every birthday card, every ticket stub, and certainly the piece of paper that proved she was not just a mistress, but a wife. I knew where she would hide it. She would not put it in a safety deposit box, because banks ask for ID and leave a paper trail. She would not bury it in the yard like a dog with a bone. She would put it in the one place she felt safe, the one place where she and Marcus had been truly happy, even if just for an hour. I drove my battered truck toward the east side. This was the part of the city council forgot. The streetlights had been broken since the 90s. The potholes were deep enough to swallow a tire. I navigated the streets by memory. I knew which corners had the drug dealers, and which corners had the grandmothers watching from the windows. I pulled up to the curb a block away from St. Jude's of the Valley. It was an old stone church that had been condemned 5 years ago after the roof collapsed during a storm. The windows were boarded up with plywood that had turned gray with rot. Weeds grew through the cracks in the stone stairs. This was where Marcus and Nia had married. I remembered the day. It was raining, just like it was raining inside my heart now. Marcus had called me at midnight, begging me to come. He said he loved her. He said he didn't care about his political career or Victoria's money. He just wanted to be right with God. The old priest, Father Gabriel, had married them in secret by candlelight because the power had been cut off for non-payment. I walked up the steps, my boots crunching on broken glass. The front doors were chained shut, but I knew the side entrance, the one the choir used to sneak out for smoke breaks. I pushed the heavy oak door. It groaned a sound like a dying animal, but it opened. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the smell of damp wood. Pigeons fluttered in the rafters, cooing softly. The main sanctuary was a ruin. The pews were overturned. The altar was covered in debris, but the large wooden cross still hung on the wall, untouched by the decay. I walked down the center aisle. I closed my eyes for a second, and I could see them. Nia in a simple white sundress holding a bouquet of wildflowers she picked from the park. Marcus, in a suit he bought at a thrift store,
looking at her like she was the only woman in the world. Where did that boy go? How did the boy who promised to love her until death turn into the man who let her die alone in a motel room? I reached the altar. The floorboards here were oak, solid and thick. I remembered Nia kneeling right here. She had been nervous. She kept twisting her hands. At one point she had dropped her rosary, and it slipped between the cracks of the floorboards. Marcus had laughed and said they would retrieve it later. They never did. I knelt down. My knees popped loudly in the silence. I pulled out a crowbar from my coat. I wedged it between the boards where they had knelt. The wood screeched as I applied pressure. I pushed harder using my weight. The board snapped up. I shone my flashlight into the dark hole. There, tangled in cobwebs, was a plastic rosary beads, and next to it, wrapped in 3 layers of heavy-duty freezer bags, was a metal tin, an old cookie tin. I reached down and pulled it out. My hands were shaking. I wiped the dust off the lid. It was rusted shut. I used the edge of the crowbar to pop it open. Inside, there was a stack of photos. Pictures of baby Leo, pictures of Marcus holding the baby, and at the bottom, a folded document. I unfolded it carefully. The paper was dry and crisp. Certificate of Holy Matrimony, signed by Mr Freeman and Nia Jenkins, witnessed by Ezekiel Freeman. I ran my thumb over my own signature. I remembered signing it. I remembered thinking that maybe, just maybe, love would be enough to save my son. I was wrong. But this paper was going to save his son. I put the document in my inside pocket, zipping it tight. I felt a surge of triumph. I had the smoking gun. I stood up and turned to leave. That is when I heard the sound. It was the crunch of tires on gravel outside. Slow, deliberate. I froze. I moved to the boarded-up window and peered through a crack in the plywood. A black SUV was idling at the curb right behind my truck. It was brand new, the paint shining under the street lamps. The windows were tinted so dark, they looked like oil slicks. The doors opened. 3 men got out. They were big. They wore tactical pants and black windbreakers. They didn't look like gangbangers. They moved with precision. They checked their corners. Mercenaries. Victoria's private security. She must have put a tracker on my truck. I cursed myself for being sloppy. I had been so focused on the destination I forgot to check my 6. They were coming toward the side door. They knew I was inside. I looked around. I couldn't go out the way I came in. I would walk right into an ambush. I needed another way. I ran to the back of the church to the sacristy. There was a small window there high up on the wall. It was small, but I was not a big man anymore. Grief had whittled me down. I stacked 2 chairs and climbed up. I pushed the window open. It led to the back alley. I squeezed through, falling onto the wet pavement outside. I landed hard on my shoulder and pain shot through my arm, but I didn't have time to feel it. I sprinted toward my truck. The men were at the side door of the church. They heard me land. One of them shouted, "He is in the alley." I reached my truck and fumbled for the keys. My hands were slippery with sweat. I jammed the key in the ignition and turned it. The engine coughed. "Come on, old girl," I whispered. "Do not die on me now." The engine roared to life just as the first man rounded the corner. He reached for something in his jacket, a gun. I slammed the truck into gear and floored it. The tires spun on the wet asphalt, screaming like a banshee before finding traction. The truck fishtailed and then shot forward. I saw the man raise his weapon, but he didn't fire. They wanted the document, not a dead body in the street. Not yet. I tore down the street. In the rearview mirror, I saw the black SUV peel out and give chase. Its engine sounded like a jet turbine. It was faster than me. It was heavier than me. In a straight line, they would run me off the road in 30 seconds. But we were not on a highway. We were in the bottoms, my neighborhood. I took a hard left onto 9th Street, cutting the corner so close I clipped a trash can, sending garbage flying. The SUV followed, taking the turn wide and smashing into a parked car, but keeping its speed. They were gaining on me. I could see the grille of the SUV getting larger in my mirror. They were going to try to perform a PIT maneuver to spin me out. I needed to think like a dock worker. On the docks, when you are moving heavy containers, you do not fight the weight. You use the space. You force the big machines into tight spots where they cannot maneuver. I knew this neighborhood. I knew that 2 blocks down there was an old railway underpass. The city had tried to pave it over, but the clearance was low, very low. My truck was an old Ford F-150 stock suspension. It would fit with maybe 2 inches to spare. The SUV was a customized Escalade lifted with a roof rack. I pushed the gas pedal to the floor. The truck shuddered as it hit 60 miles an hour on the narrow residential street. The SUV was right on my bumper now. I could see the driver's face. He was wearing sunglasses at night. I headed straight for the underpass. It looked like a black mouth waiting to swallow us. There was a sign hanging above the entrance. Clearance, 6 feet 8 inches. I did not slow down. I grit my teeth and hunched my shoulders, as if that would make the truck smaller. "Hold on," I shouted to no one. My truck shot into the tunnel. The roof antenna scraped against the concrete ceiling, with a screech of metal on stone, sending sparks showering down behind me. It was tight. I felt the pressure in the cabin, but I made it through. The SUV driver realized the trap too late. He slammed on his brakes. I heard the screech of high-performance tires locking up. Then I heard the crash. Crunch. It was the sound of expensive metal meeting immovable concrete. The roof rack of the SUV caught the edge of the underpass. The vehicle bucked violently, the front end lifting off the ground, before slamming back down, wedged tight like a cork in a bottle. I watched in the rearview mirror as steam hissed from their radiator. They were stuck. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "Welcome to the neighborhood, boys," I said. I slowed down, turning onto a side street, to disappear into the labyrinth of the projects. I was safe, for now, but my hands were still shaking on the wheel. They knew where I was. They knew what I was driving. I could not go back to Saul's. I could not go back to my house. I pulled over under a broken streetlight and stripped the interior of my truck. I found the tracker stuck under the passenger seat. It was a small black magnetic disc, blinking with a tiny red light. I looked at it. A piece of technology worth more than my truck used to hunt me down like an animal. I saw a city bus pulling up to the stop across the street. It was the crosstown line going to the airport. I ran across the street and stuck the tracker under the rear bumper of the bus, just as the doors closed. "Have a nice trip to the airport, fellas," I whispered. I got back in my truck. I touched the pocket where the marriage certificate lay against my chest. It felt hot, like a burning coal. I had the proof. I had the leverage. But now the game had changed. They were not just trying to scare me anymore. They had sent a hit squad. This meant they were desperate. And desperate people make mistakes. I needed to make my next move count. I needed to get Leo back. And to do that, I had to walk right into the belly of the beast. I needed to crash a party. I remembered seeing a flyer in the trash can at Marcus's office. A charity gala, tonight, hosted by the V&M Foundation. The same foundation that paid Nia to stay hidden. Victoria would be there. Marcus would be there. Her father, the senator, would be there. It was a black tie event. I looked down at my grease-stained jacket and my worn boots. I did not have a tuxedo, but I had something better. I had the truth. I put the truck in gear. "I am coming for you, Victoria, and I am bringing the one guest you forgot to invite, Justice." I drove to the old pier down by the shipyard. It was the place where I taught Marcus how to fish when he was 6 years old. Back then, he was afraid to put the worm on the hook. He used to cry when we caught a perch because he felt sorry for it. I used to tell him that a man does what he has to do to feed his family. I looked at the dark water churning against the pylons, and I wondered if I had taught him the wrong lessons. Maybe I taught him how to survive, but I forgot to tell him how to live. My shoulder was throbbing from the fall at the church. My truck was hidden behind a stack of rusted shipping containers. I sat on the hood and waited. I had called Marcus from the burner phone. I told him I had the one thing that could save him. I told him to come alone. I saw headlights cut through the fog. It was not the black SUV that had chased me. It was Marcus's silver Mercedes. He parked 50 yards away. He sat in the car for a long time before he got out. When he walked toward me, he looked small. The expensive suit hung on him like a costume. He was shivering, but it was not cold out. "Dad," he said, his voice trembling, "you look like you have been in a war." "I am in a war, Marcus," I said, "and so are you. The only difference is I know who I am fighting." He stopped a few feet away. He looked at the bruises on my face. He looked at the grease on my jacket. "Victoria is going crazy," he whispered. "She says you attacked her security team. She says you are dangerous." I reached into my pocket and pulled out the certificate. It was wrapped in plastic, but even in the dim light of the shipyard security lamps, it glowed like a beacon. "I did not attack anyone, Marcus. I defended myself. just like Nia tried to defend herself. I held up the paper. "Do you know what this is?" I asked. Marcus squinted. He took a step closer. Then he stopped. His face went pale.
"Where did you get that?"
he gasped. "I found it where you left it," I said, "under the floorboards of St. Jude's, next to the rosary beads she prayed with while you were out living your lie." Marcus looked at the ground. "I told her to burn it. She promised me she burned it." "She lied," I said, "because she knew that one day she might need to save her son from the wolves, and that day is today." I walked up to him. I put my hand on his shoulder. I felt him flinch. Marcus looked at me. He looked up. His eyes were swimming with tears. "This piece of paper proves that your marriage to Victoria is a fraud. You are a bigamist, Marcus. In the eyes of the law, Nia was your wife until the moment she died. That means you are not bound by the prenuptial agreement. It means Victoria cannot cut you off without exposing herself. It means her father, the senator, cannot touch you without destroying his own legacy." I shook him gently. "You are free, son. Do you understand? You do not have to be her lapdog anymore. We can take this to the authorities. We can explain that you were coerced. We can get Leo back." At the mention of Leo's name, Marcus crumbled. He fell to his knees on the dirty concrete. He put his face in his hands and started to sob. It was a deep, guttural sound, the sound of a man who has been holding his breath for 5 years. "I am so sorry, Dad," he cried. "I am so sorry. I was so scared. She told me she would put me in jail for the embezzlement. She told me she would make sure I never worked again." I knelt down beside him. I put my arm around him. It felt like holding the little boy who was afraid of the worm. "It is okay, Marcus," I said. "We can fix the money. We can pay back what you stole. I will sell the house. We will work it out. But you have to choose, right now. Are you a father or are you a puppet?" Marcus grabbed my jacket. He buried his face in my chest. "I want my son," he sobbed. "I want to see Leo. I miss Nia so much, Dad." I never stopped loving her. "Victoria is a monster. She treats me like a servant." "Then stand up," I said. "Stand up and come with me. We are going to get Leo. We are going to the FBI." Marcus nodded. He wiped his face with his sleeve. He took a deep breath. "Okay, Dad. Okay. You are right. I cannot do this anymore." He stood up. He looked at the marriage certificate in my hand. "Can I hold it?" he asked. "Just for a second." I looked at him. I saw the pain in his eyes. I saw the regret. I handed him the paper. He held it like it was holy scripture. He ran his fingers over Nia's signature. "I am going to make this right," he whispered. I felt a massive weight lift off my chest. I had done it. I had saved my son. The prodigal son had returned. "I need a minute, Dad," Marcus said, sniffing. "I need to compose myself. I cannot walk into the FBI looking like this." "Take your time, son," I said. "I have a bottle of water in the truck. I will get it for you." I turned around and walked toward the shadows where my truck was hidden. I felt tired, bone-deep tired, but it was a good tired, the kind of tired you feel after a double shift when you know you put food on the table. I reached the truck and opened the door. I grabbed the water bottle. That was when I heard it. The sound carried over the quiet water. It was a hushed voice, urgent, desperate. I froze. I did not slam the truck door. I left it open. I crept back toward the edge of the shipping container. Marcus was standing by the pier railing. He had his phone to his ear. He was not looking at the marriage certificate. He was looking at his watch. "Yes, Victoria," he whispered. I stopped breathing. The blood in my veins turned to ice. "I have him," Marcus said into the phone. "He is here, at the old shipyard, Pier 4. Pause. "Yes, I have the paper. He gave it to me. It is in my hand." Pause. "No, Victoria, please. You promised. If I gave you him and the paper, you said you would forgive the debt. You said we could start over." I leaned my head against the cold steel of the container. I closed my eyes. The pain was worse than the bullet wound I took in Vietnam. It was worse than the cancer that took Coretta. This was the death of hope. My son was not crying because he was sorry. He was crying because he was weak. He was crying because he knew he was about to sell his own father to save his worthless skin. "How long?" Marcus asked. 5 minutes. "Okay. I will keep him talking. Just please tell the security team not to hurt me." I opened my eyes. I looked at him one last time. He was standing there straightening his tie, practicing his sad face, waiting for me to come back with the water so he could betray me. He was not Marcus anymore. Marcus died a long time ago. This thing in the expensive suit was just a hollow shell filled with fear and greed. I realized then that I was truly alone. There was no family reunion. There was no redemption. There was only the mission. And the mission was Leo. I looked at the marriage certificate in his hand. I had lost the original, but he forgot who he was dealing with. I am not a lawyer. I am a mechanic. I always make a backup. I had taken a photo of the certificate with the burner phone before I met him. It was not as good as the original, but it was enough to cause trouble. And I had the recording. I pulled the recorder from my pocket. It had been running the whole time. I had his confession. I had him admitting to the embezzlement. I had him admitting to the conspiracy with Victoria. I looked at the water. It was dark and deep. I could walk out there and break his neck. I could snap him like a twig. It would be easy, but that would be mercy. And he did not deserve mercy. He deserved to live with what he had done. I quietly closed the truck door. I did not start the engine. That would alert him. I released the parking brake. I put the truck in neutral. I pushed it. My muscles screamed. My shoulder burned. But I pushed the truck backward into the shadows further away from the pier toward the access road. When I was far enough away, I climbed in and let it roll down the hill. I only started the engine when I was 2 blocks away. As I drove off, I looked in the rearview mirror. I saw headlights swarming the pier, 3 black SUVs. I saw men jumping out with guns. I saw them surround Marcus. I saw Marcus pointing toward where my truck used to be, looking confused, looking terrified. I saw Victoria step out of the lead car. I saw her slap him across the face. "Goodbye, Marcus," I whispered. I did not feel sad anymore. I felt cold. I felt focused. I was done being a father. Now I was a soldier. I checked the time. The charity gala started in 2 hours. They thought they had trapped me at the pier. They thought they had the document. They thought they had won. They were going to be celebrating tonight, drinking champagne, laughing about the stupid old man they had outsmarted. They did not know that the stupid old man was coming to dinner, and I was bringing an appetite for destruction. I drove toward the city lights. The sun is dead. Long live the grandson. I drove back to my house on 4th Street under the cover of darkness. I knew it was a risk. I knew they were watching. But a man needs supplies if he is going to go underground. I needed my medication. I needed the cash I had hidden in the vent in the bathroom. And I needed one picture of Coretta, the one where she is laughing at our wedding with cake frosting on her nose. If I was going to die in this fight, I wanted to look at that face one last time. I parked the truck 3 blocks away and walked through the backyards. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of quiet that feels heavy. I slipped through my back gate. The hinges squeaked. I froze. I waited. Nothing but the sound of crickets and the distant hum of the highway. I unlocked the back door and stepped into the kitchen. The smell hit me. It was the smell of home, decades of Sunday dinners, the scent of lavender soap, the lingering aroma of the pipe tobacco I used to smoke before the doctor told me to quit. It was the smell of a life lived well. I moved quickly. I didn't turn on the lights. I knew every inch of this floor. I knew which board creaked in the hallway. I knew exactly where the coffee table was. I moved like a ghost in my own house. I got the cash. I grabbed my blood pressure pills. I went to the bedroom and took the silver frame from the nightstand. I held it for a second, running my thumb over the glass. "I am sorry, Coretta," I whispered. "I am sorry I brought this darkness to our doorstep." I was about to leave. I was halfway to the kitchen door when I heard it. It wasn't a knock. It wasn't a footstep. It was the sound of glass breaking. Not one window, all of them. Smash, smash, smash. The sound came from the front, from the living room, from the dining room. Then came the sound that every soldier knows, the sound that nightmares are made of. The whoosh of air being sucked into a vacuum, followed by the roar of ignition. They didn't just break the windows, they threw something inside. I smelled it instantly. Gasoline, sharp and chemical. Then the heat hit me. It wasn't a slow fire, it was an explosion. The front of the house erupted. I saw the orange glow reflect off the hallway walls. It moved fast, too fast. They must have doused the porch before they threw the cocktails. "Fire!" I shouted, though there was no one to hear me. I ran toward the back door, but as I reached the kitchen, I saw a bottle spin through the air, crashing through the window above the sink. It shattered on the floor. Liquid fire sprayed everywhere. It caught the curtains. It caught the wooden cabinets. The back exit was blocked. A wall of flame stood between me and the yard. I was trapped. The smoke was already filling the air. Thick, black, oily smoke. It stung my eyes and clawed at my throat. I dropped to the floor. The air is cleaner down low. That is what they taught us in basic training. Stay low. Keep moving. I crawled back toward the hallway. The heat was unbearable. It felt like the skin on my back was blistering. The roar of the fire was deafening. It sounded like a living thing, a beast that was eating my memories. I couldn't go out the front. I couldn't go out the back. The basement. I kicked open the door to the cellar. I tumbled down the wooden stairs. I coughed, hacking up black soot. The air down here was cooler, but smoke was pouring in from above. I scrambled to the small egress window. It was high up, too high, and it was painted shut. I grabbed an old hammer from my workbench. I swung it with everything I had. Crack! The glass shattered. I cleared the shards with my sleeve. I pulled myself up. My shoulders screamed in protest. I pushed and wiggled, squeezing my old body through the narrow opening. I fell out onto the grass of my side yard. I rolled away from the house, gasping for air. I didn't stop rolling until I hit the fence. I stood up, stumbling. I looked back. My house. My beautiful house. It was gone. The flames were shooting 20 feet into the air. The roof was already sagging. The windows blew out one by one, sending showers of sparks into the night sky like demonic fireworks. I stood there, covered in soot, clutching the picture of Coretta to my chest. I watched the front porch collapse. That was where I sat with Leo just yesterday. That was where I asked Coretta to marry me 50 years ago. That was where I taught Marcus to tie his shoes. All of it. Burning. The sirens wailed in the distance, but they were too late. The fire was too hot, too fast. This was professional work. This was designed to leave nothing behind. I saw the neighbors coming out onto their lawns. Mrs. Gable, the man from across the street. They stood in their pajamas watching the inferno. They didn't look at me. They looked at the fire. Their faces were illuminated by the orange glow. I saw fear in their eyes. They knew. Deep down, they knew. Houses don't just explode like that. This was a message, and the message was loud and clear. If you stand with Zeke Freeman, you burn with him. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. The screen was cracked, but it still worked. It was a text message. Unknown number. Next time you won't be waking up. Leave town. I looked at the phone. Then I looked at the fire. Most men would have broken right then and there. Most men would have fallen to their knees and wept for the loss of everything they owned, for the clothes on the hangers, for the photo albums on the shelves, for the safe space where they slept. But I didn't weep. Something strange happened to me as I watched the roof of my house cave in with a thunderous crash. The fear evaporated. For days I had been afraid of losing my home, afraid of losing my reputation, afraid of going to jail, afraid of dying. But now the worst had happened. They had taken my home. They had taken my name. They had tried to kill me, and I was still standing. I felt a cold calm settle over me. It was a familiar feeling. I hadn't felt it since 1968 in the jungle outside of Da Nang. It is the feeling of a soldier who realizes he has no way home, so he might as well move forward. The Zeke Freeman who worried about his pension was dead. He died in that fire. The Zeke Freeman who cared what the neighbors thought was dead. The man standing in the shadows of the backyard was someone else. I was stripped clean. I had no possessions. I had no address. I had nothing left for them to take. And a man with nothing to lose is invincible. I looked at the message again. Next time. There won't be a next time, Victoria, I whispered, because I am done playing defense. You burned my past. Fine. I didn't need it anyway. It was heavy. It was holding me back. Now I am light. Now I am a ghost. I put the phone back in my pocket. I tucked the picture of Coretta inside my jacket. I didn't wait for the fire trucks. I didn't wait for the police to come and take a statement that they would just lose or falsify. I didn't wait for the neighbors to point and whisper. I turned my back on the flames. I walked through the shadows of the alley. I moved with a new purpose. My stride was longer. My pain was gone. Adrenaline and hatred are a powerful fuel. I needed weapons, not guns. Guns are loud and messy. I needed tools. I needed access. I needed a team. I walked toward the subway station. The darkness didn't scare me anymore. I was the darkness. Victoria wanted a war. She thought she was bombing a helpless old man. She didn't realize she was bombing the seal on a cage. She just let the animal out. I walked past a shop window and saw my reflection. My face was blackened with soot. My hair was singed. My eyes were white circles in a mask of charcoal. I didn't look like a grandfather. I looked like a reaper. Good. I caught the last train heading downtown. The car was empty except for a drunk sleeping in the corner. I sat down and looked at my hands. They were steady, rock steady. I thought about Marcus. I wondered if he was watching the news. I wondered if he felt a pang of guilt when he saw his childhood home burning. Probably not. He was too busy saving his own skin. I thought about Leo, my little lion. He was out there somewhere scared and alone. Don't worry, Leo, I said to the empty train car. Grandpa is done being nice. The train rattled into the tunnel. Tomorrow, I go on the offensive. Tomorrow, I stop running. Tomorrow, I hunt. The place is called The Last Post. It is a dive bar tucked away in the basement of a VFW hall on the edge of the industrial district. There is no sign out front. You only know it is there if you served. It smells of stale beer sawdust and the specific kind of cheap cologne that old men wear to cover up the scent of loneliness. But to me, it smells like sanctuary. It is the only place left in this city where a man is judged by his character and not his bank account. I walked down the concrete steps, my boots heavy on the metal treads. I was still covered in soot from the fire. My jacket was singed. My face was streaked with charcoal and sweat. I must have looked like a demon rising from the pit. The bartender was a guy named Sully, who lost an arm in the Gulf. He looked up as I pushed through the door. He didn't blink. He just reached under the counter and pulled out a bottle of whiskey and a glass. I walked past the bar to the back booth, the one in the shadows, the one reserved for the guys who don't want to be found. Saul had made the calls. He told me they would be here, and Saul never misses. Sitting in the booth were 3 men. They looked like the leftovers of a world that had moved on without them. But I knew better. I knew that under the gray hair and the wrinkles were the sharpest minds and the hardest fists I had ever known. First there was Jeremiah. He was wearing a suit that was 20 years out of style, but pressed to perfection. Jeremiah used to be the best defense attorney in the state. He could talk a jury into believing the sky was green. But he had a fatal flaw. He had a conscience. 10 years ago he found out a judge was taking bribes to send kids to private prisons. Jeremiah exposed him. The system didn't thank him. The system disbarred him, ruined him, and left him driving a cab. He was drinking water. He never touched alcohol. He said he needed his mind clear for the day the revolution started. Next to him was Larry the locksmith. Larry was a small man, nervous and twitchy. He had arthritis in his knuckles, but give him a paperclip in 10 seconds and he could get into the Pentagon. He spent 5 years in federal prison for breaking into a bank vault, not to steal the money, just to prove he could do it. He was currently rearranging the salt and pepper shakers on the table, making sure they were perfectly aligned. And then there was Big T, Terrence. He took up half the booth. He was 6'6" and built like a brick outhouse. Big T used to run the numbers game on the east side. He used to break legs for a living. But then he found God and started a soup kitchen. He hadn't thrown a punch in 15 years, but everyone knew the sleeping giant was still in there. He was eating a basket of peanuts, cracking the shells with a terrifying ease. They all looked up when I approached. Zeke Jeremiah said, his voice smooth and deep like polished mahogany. "You look like you just walked out of a chimney." "I did," I said, sliding into the empty seat. "My house is gone, Jeremiah. They burned it down." The table went silent. Larry stopped playing with the salt shakers. Big T stopped chewing. "Burned it down?" Big T rumbled. His voice sounded like rocks grinding together. "With you inside?" I nodded. "They threw Molotovs. They wanted me dead. They have my grandson. And Marcus. Marcus is the one who set me up." I poured a shot of whiskey, but I didn't drink it. I dipped my finger in it and cleaned a cut on my cheek. The sting cleared my head. I told them everything. I told them about Naya. I told them about the bigamy. I told them about the trust fund and the millions of dollars Victoria was protecting. I told them about the secret adoption agency in Switzerland. When I finished, Jeremiah leaned back and tented his fingers. So he said, "Let me get this straight. You were up against a senator's daughter, a corrupt police force, and a billion-dollar legal team. You have no money, no home, and you are technically a fugitive since they flagged you for fraud. That sums it up, I said. And you want our help? Jeremiah asked. I looked at each of them. I cannot pay you, I said. I have $5 grand in cash, and that is it. But I can offer you something else. What is that? Larry asked, his eyes darting around the room. A chance, I said. A chance to show these people that they cannot just throw us away. Look at us. The world thinks we are useless. They think we are just old men waiting to die. They took your license, Jeremiah. I have been reading up on the V&M Foundation. They are hosting a gala tonight. The senator is going to be there. The press is going to be there. It is the social event of the season. I know, I said. That is where I am going. You cannot just walk in there, Jeremiah said, shaking his head. They will have security. They will have a guest list. If you step foot on the property, they will arrest you for trespassing before you can open your mouth. And even if you get in, no judge will look at your evidence. Victoria owns the judges. I don't need a judge, I said. I need an audience. I pulled the marriage certificate out of my pocket, or rather the copy I had printed at Saul's. I don't want to sue them, Jeremiah. I want to shame them. I want to destroy their reputation. The senator cares about one thing, his image. If we prove on live television that his daughter is a fraud and his son-in-law is a bigamist, the money stops. The power stops. Jeremiah nodded slowly. The court of public opinion. It is the only court where money doesn't guarantee a verdict. I like it. But getting in there is impossible, Larry squeaked. The security at the Plaza Hotel is state-of-the-art. Biometric scanners. RFID chips in the invitations. That is why I need you, Larry, I said. You are going to get us in. Larry cracked his knuckles. I might still have a few tricks. The plaza uses the old Honeywell system for their service elevators. I can bypass that. And what about the guards? Big T asked. They will have hired muscle. Probably the same guys who burned your house. I looked at Big T. That is why I need you, T. I need someone to watch my back. I need someone who can make sure I get to that microphone. Big T looked at his massive hands. I promised my pastor I wouldn't hurt anyone anymore, Zeke. I am not asking you to hurt them, I said. I am asking you to protect a child. They have Leo. They are going to ship him off like a package. Big T closed his eyes. He took a deep breath. When he opened them, there was a fire there that hadn't been seen since the 90s. For the boy, he said, I am in. Jeremiah picked up his glass of water. I suppose I can draft a few affidavits, he said. And if we are going to do this, we need to do it right. We need to control the narrative. I still have a few contacts in the press, honest reporters who hate the senator. I can make sure the cameras are rolling when you walk in. I looked at my friends, my squad. We were a broken-down bunch. A disbarred lawyer, a nervous thief, a retired thug, and a homeless mechanic. But looking at them, I didn't see weakness. I saw experience. Victoria has mercenaries who fight for a paycheck. I have brothers who fight for honor. We have 4 hours, I said, checking the clock on the wall. We need suits, we need gear, and we need to move fast. Larry stood up. I know a guy who runs a costume shop. He owes me a favor. We can get tuxedos. Big T stood up. I need to make a stop at the trunk of my car. I have a specialized tool for crowd control. Jeremiah stood up and smoothed his jacket. I will drive. My cab is outside. It is the only vehicle they won't be looking for. I finished my whiskey. The burn felt good. We walked out of the bar together. 4 old men stepping into the night. The wind was cold, but I didn't feel it. We drove to Larry's contact. We got the suits. They smelled like mothballs and they didn't fit quite right. Big T looked like a refrigerator wrapped in black satin. Larry looked like a penguin. I looked like an undertaker. But when I looked in the mirror, I didn't see the soot anymore. I saw a man on a mission. We piled into Jeremiah's yellow taxi. The city lights blurred past us. We are not going to the front door, Jeremiah said, watching the traffic. No, I said. We are going through the kitchen. Larry laughed nervously. Just like the old days. Just like the old days, I repeated. I touched the pocket where the evidence lay. Victoria thinks she burned my house down. She thinks she burned me out. She forgot that fire doesn't just destroy. It purifies. It hardens. She turned me into steel, and tonight she is going to feel the weight of it. Step on it, Jeremiah, I said. We have a wedding to crash. The taxi accelerated, weaving through the traffic. We were the ghosts of this city, and we were coming to haunt the rich and powerful. "Hold on, Leo. The cavalry is coming." The address Ms. Sterling had given the police was for a temporary holding center in the suburbs. But Saul found out that was a lie. The real location was a private facility called Serenity House on the outskirts of the industrial park. The name was a joke. It was a brick fortress surrounded by a 12-foot fence topped with razor wire. It looked less like a home for children and more like a warehouse for broken things. This was where Victoria paid to stash the problems she wanted to disappear. Jeremiah parked the taxi 2 blocks away, in the shadow of a derelict factory. He kept the engine running. The windshield wipers beat a steady rhythm against the relentless rain. I looked at my reflection in the rearview mirror. I was wearing a tuxedo that was a size too big, smelling faintly of mothballs. Next to me, Big T looked like a mountain wrapped in black satin. In the front seat, Larry was checking his tools, his fingers dancing with nervous energy. "We look like a retirement home choir that took a wrong turn," I said. "We look like trouble," Jeremiah corrected. "I will give you 15 minutes. If you are not back by then, I am driving this cab through the front gate and causing a diversion." "You just keep the meter running, Jeremiah," I said. We stepped out into the rain. It was cold, deep, bone-chilling cold. We moved toward the service entrance at the back of the building. Larry had studied the blueprints. He said there was a delivery bay that used an electronic keypad. We reached the steel door. A security camera hummed above us, its red eye blinking in the dark. "Smile T," I whispered. Big T reached up. He didn't smash the camera. He just covered the lens with a piece of chewing gum he had been working on for the last 10 minutes. Simple, effective. Larry stepped up to the keypad. He pulled out a small device that looked like a garage door opener, connected to a mess of wires. He attached it to the panel. The numbers on the display flickered. "Come on, Larry," Big T rumbled. "My suit is getting wet." "Don't rush the artist," Larry hissed. Click. The light on the lock turned green. The heavy bolt slid back with a thud. We slipped inside. The hallway smelled of bleach and boiled cabbage. It was the smell of institutional misery. The lights were dimmed for the night. We walked softly. My work boots squeaked on the linoleum, but Big T moved with surprising silence for a man of his size. We needed to find room 104. That was where the intake record said Leo was being held. We turned a corner and froze. At the end of the hall sat a guard. He was young, burly, and bored, scrolling through his phone. He looked up when he saw us. 3 old men in tuxedos dripping wet in a secure hallway. He blinked. He probably thought he was hallucinating. "Hey," he shouted, standing up and reaching for the baton on his belt. "You cannot be in here." Big T stepped forward. He didn't run. He just walked. A slow, steady advance, like a glacier. The guard pulled his baton. "Back off, old man, or I will." Big T reached out. His hand was the size of a catcher's mitt. He grabbed the baton. He didn't yank it away. He just crushed it. We heard the plastic crack in his grip. The guard's eyes went wide. He looked at the crushed baton, then up at Big T's face. "Sleep," Big T said. His voice was deep and soothing, like a lullaby from a grizzly bear. He placed his other hand on the guard's shoulder and applied pressure to a nerve cluster near the neck. It was a move he learned in the 70s. The guard's eyes rolled back in his head and he crumpled to the floor. Big T caught him before he hit the ground and laid him gently against the wall. "He is a good boy," Big T said, adjusting his bow tie. "Just working the wrong job." We kept moving. Room 100, room 102, room 104. The door was heavy metal, with a small reinforced window. It was locked from the outside. Larry didn't need the electronic tool for this one. He pulled out a tension wrench and a pick. 2 seconds. Click. I pushed the door open. The room was dark. A single streetlight from outside cast long bars of shadow across the floor. It was cold in there, too cold for a child. There was a metal cot in the corner with a thin gray blanket, but the bed was empty. My heart stopped. "He is not here," I whispered. The panic clawed at my throat. If they moved him, if they already sent him away. "Check the bathroom," Larry said. I checked the small bathroom. Empty. Then I remembered. The closet. In the apartment, he had hidden in the closet. It was his safe space. I looked around the room. There was no closet, just a metal wardrobe bolted to the wall. I walked over to it. I knocked gently on the metal door. Leo the First whispered, "It is Grandpa." Silence. "Leo, please. I know you are scared. I am here to take you home." I heard a small scratch, a sniffle. I pulled the handle. It wasn't locked. The door swung open. Curled up in the bottom of the wardrobe amongst a pile of dirty laundry was my grandson. He was hugging his knees to his chest. He was wearing the same pajamas he had on when they took him, but they were filthy now. His face was streaked with tears and snot. He looked up. He saw the tuxedo. He saw the bruise on my face. He saw the wet gray hair plastered to my forehead. "Grandpa," he squeaked. I fell to my knees. I didn't care about the arthritis. I didn't care about the damp floor. I reached out and pulled him into my arms. He felt so small, so fragile. He buried his face in my wet jacket and started to shake. "I thought you were not coming," he sobbed. "The lady said you were gone. She said you were a bad man and you went away." "The lady is a liar, Leo," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I told you. Grandpa always keeps his promises." I lifted him up. He wrapped his legs around my waist and clamped his arms around my neck like a vice. He wasn't going to let go, not for anything. "We have to go, Zeke," Big T said from the doorway. He was checking his watch. "The guard shift changes in 4 minutes." I stood up holding Leo. He felt heavy, but it was the best weight I had ever carried. I looked at my friends. Larry was grinning a toothy, nervous smile. Big T gave me a thumbs up. "Let's get the hell out of here," I said. We moved back down the hallway, faster this time. We passed the sleeping guard, who was starting to stir. We reached the exit. The rain was still coming down in sheets. We burst out into the alley and ran for the taxi. Jeremiah had the back door open before we even reached the curb. We piled in. Big T took the front. Larry and I and Leo squeezed into the back. "Go, Jeremiah, go," I shouted. The taxi tires screeched on the wet pavement. We sped away just as lights started to flick on inside the facility. The alarm started to ring, a distant wail that faded as we put distance between us and that prison. Leo was still clinging to me. I took off my tuxedo jacket and wrapped it around him. "Are we going home, Grandpa?" he asked, looking up at me with those big amber eyes. Marcus's eyes, but filled with Nia's soul. "Not yet, Leo," I said, smoothing his hair. "We have one more stop." "Where are we going?" he asked. "We are going to a party," I said. "A very fancy party, and we are going to tell everyone a story." I looked at Jeremiah in the rearview mirror. His eyes met mine. "You got the package?" he asked. "Safe and sound," I said. "What is the ETA to the Plaza Hotel?" Jeremiah asked. 20 minutes if I drive like a sane person," Jeremiah said. 10 if I drive like I used to drive. Get away for the East Side gang. Drive like a maniac, Jeremiah," I said. "We cannot be late. The bride is waiting." The taxi accelerated, weaving through traffic like a yellow bullet. I looked down at Leo. He had fallen asleep against my chest, exhausted by fear and relief. "Sleep well, little lion," I whispered. "When you wake up, the world is going to be a different place." I checked my pocket. The marriage certificate was still there, dry in its plastic bag. The audio recorder was there. I looked at my reflection in the window. The soot was washing away, but the scars remained. I was tired. I was old. I was beaten. But I was dangerous. Victoria wanted to play games with families. She wanted to break them apart to save her fortune. Tonight, I was going to show her what a real family looks like. It doesn't look like a portrait in a mansion. It looks like 3 old men in cheap tuxedos and a yellow taxi speeding through the rain to save a child. We are coming, Victoria, and we are bringing the storm. The Plaza Hotel looked like a castle made of light. From the back seat of the speeding taxi, I could see the line of limousines snaking around the block. They looked like shiny black beetles crawling toward a pile of sugar. These were the people who ran the city, the judges, the bankers, the politicians, and tonight they were all gathering to applaud the senator and his daughter for their generosity. The gala was titled, "The Future of Our Children." The irony tasted like copper in my mouth. They were raising millions of dollars for underprivileged youth, while the very woman hosting the event had tried to erase my grandson from existence. Jeremiah steered the taxi toward the delivery entrance. He killed the lights as we turned into the alley. The rain had stopped, but the ground was slick and black. "We have a problem," Jeremiah said, looking at the service bay. "There are guards, 2 of them, private security." I looked. They were wearing the same uniforms as the men who chased me. Victoria wasn't taking any chances. She had locked down the perimeter. "Larry, can you get us past them?" I asked. Larry squinted through the rain-streaked window. Not without a fight, Zeke. And if we fight, we make noise. If we make noise, they lock the doors before we even get inside. I looked at Big T. He was sitting in the front seat, shielding Leo with his massive body. Leo was awake now, staring at the lights with wide, fearful eyes. T, I said, I need you to stay here. Keep the engine running. Keep the boys safe. If things go wrong inside, if I don't come out in 20 minutes, you take him to the state line. You get him to your sister in Philly. Do not stop for anything. Big T looked at me. His face was a mask of worry. You cannot go in there alone, Zeke. That is a room full of sharks. I am not alone, I said, patting my pocket. I have the truth, and I have Jeremiah. Jeremiah nodded, adjusting his tie. I might be disbarred, Zeke, but I still know how to make an entrance, and I know half the reporters waiting in that ballroom. I turned to Leo. I took his small hand in mine. It was warm. It felt like holding a baby bird. Leo, I said, Grandpa has to go do some work. Big T is going to watch you. He is the strongest man I know. You are safe here. Will you come back? Leo whispered. I squeezed his hand. I will always come back. I opened the door and stepped out. Jeremiah followed me. We straightened our cheap tuxedos. They were damp and wrinkled, but in the dark alley we looked enough like the catering staff to pass at a distance. But we weren't going in as staff. We walked past the delivery bay toward the smoking area. There was a metal door propped open with a brick. A waiter was standing there, puffing on a cigarette, scrolling through his phone. He looked up as we approached. He saw two old men in tuxedos. He probably assumed we were guests who had gotten lost looking for the bathroom or fresh air. Evening, gentlemen, he said, flicking his ash. Main entrance is around the front. I know, I said, walking past him with total confidence. We just needed a breath of air. The speeches are about to start. He stepped aside. The confidence trick. If you act like you belong, most people won't question you. It is a lesson I learned in the army. Walk tall, even if you are marching into hell. We stepped into the kitchen. It was a chaotic symphony of shouting chefs, clanging pans, and sizzling oil. Steam filled the air. Dozens of waiters were rushing back and forth, carrying silver trays of lobster and steak. Nobody looked at us. We were just obstacles in their path. We weaved through the madness, dodging tray carriers and sous chefs. We reached the double doors at the end of the kitchen. Beyond them lay the ballroom. I stopped. I pulled out my phone. It was 8:55 p.m. According to the program, Victoria was scheduled to speak at 9 p.m. I opened the email app. I had drafted the message earlier with Saul's help. The subject line was clear. Criminal evidence. The V&M Foundation fraud and murder investigation. Attached to the email were the audio files of Victoria threatening me, the digital records of the payments to Nia, the rejected divorce filing proving the bigamy, and the video Nia made before she died. I had entered the email addresses of every major news outlet in the city, the Times, the Tribune, the TV stations, and for good measure, the FBI field office and the state attorney general. I looked at Jeremiah. Are you ready? I asked. Jeremiah pulled out his own phone. He had his own contacts. He had texted his old friend at Channel 5 News, telling him to keep his camera rolling no matter what happened. Set the timer, I said. I set the email to send automatically at 9:05 p.m. 5 minutes into her speech, right when she would be talking about honesty and family values, it was a modern bomb. No gunpowder, just data. But it was going to blow a hole in their world that money couldn't fix. I put the phone away. Let's go, I said. We pushed through the double doors. The transition was jarring. We went from the noisy, humid kitchen into a world of cool air conditioning and soft classical music. The ballroom was massive. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling like frozen explosions. The tables were covered in white linen and expensive flowers. There were hundreds of people, men in black ties, women in diamonds that cost more than my entire neighborhood. They were drinking champagne and laughing polite, hollow laughs. We stood at the back of the room in the shadows. Nobody noticed us. We were just two more old men in a sea of suits. I scanned the room. There at the head table sat the senator. He was laughing, holding a glass of wine, his face flushed with success. Next to him sat Marcus. My son looked terrible. Even from this distance, I could see the bruises on his face where the security team must have roughed him up after I escaped the pier. Or maybe Victoria did it herself. He was staring at his plate, not speaking to anyone. He looked like a prisoner at his own execution. And then there was Victoria. She was standing at the podium, adjusting the microphone. She looked radiant. She was wearing a silver gown that shimmered under the lights. Her hair was perfect. Her smile was perfect. She looked like an angel. And that is why she was so dangerous. The devil doesn't come with horns and a pitchfork. He comes with a smile and a charity foundation. She tapped the microphone. The room went silent. The classical music faded.
"Good evening, everyone," Victoria said. Her voice was smooth like warm honey. "Thank you all for coming. Tonight is a celebration of love, a celebration of family, and most importantly, a celebration of the future." Applause rippled through the room. I felt Jeremiah nudge me. He pointed to a camera crew near the front. The red light was on. They were broadcasting live. "Perfect," Victoria continued. "When I look out at this room, I see generosity. I see people who care about those who are less fortunate. My father taught me that those to whom much is given, much is expected. That is why we started the V&M Foundation, to help the children who have been forgotten, the children who have no voice." I felt the rage rising in my chest. It was hot and sharp. She was talking about voiceless children while she had my grandson locked in a cage. She was talking about generosity while she paid to have a young mother murdered. I checked my watch. 9:02 p.m. 3 minutes. I started moving. I didn't run. I walked down the side aisle, keeping to the shadows. Jeremiah stayed back, ready to signal the reporters. Victoria was getting into the rhythm of her speech now. "We have raised $5 million tonight," she announced. $5 million that will go to building orphanages and schools. We are building safe havens, places where children can feel loved and protected. I was getting closer. I was 20 feet from the stage now. A security guard near the stairs spotted me. He frowned. He started to move toward me, speaking into his earpiece. I didn't stop. I kept my eyes locked on Victoria. She saw me. It was subtle at first. She faltered in her speech just for a fraction of a second. Her eyes flicked to the side. She saw the battered old man in the ill-fitting tuxedo walking toward her. Her smile didn't drop, but her eyes went wide. She looked at the security guard and gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. "Remove him." The guard lunged for me. "Sir, you need to step back," he growled, grabbing my arm. I didn't fight him. I didn't need to get to the microphone. I just needed to be seen. I shook his hand off just long enough to raise my voice. "Ask her about Leo," I shouted. My voice was hoarse, but it carried across the silent room. Victoria froze. The name hit her like a slap. "Ask her about the child she kidnapped," I yelled. "Ask her about the mother she killed." The room gasped. A murmur of confusion rippled through the crowd. "Get him out of here," Victoria hissed into the microphone, forgetting to cover it. 2 more guards rushed toward me. They grabbed me by the shoulders. They were strong. They started dragging me back toward the exit. "Ladies and gentlemen," Victoria said, her voice rising, trying to regain control. "Please ignore the disturbance. Just a confused individual. Mental illness is a terrible tragedy, and I checked my watch. 9:05 p.m. Ding, 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 ding. It started as a few isolated sounds, the sound of notifications. Then it became a chorus. Every phone in the room started buzzing and chirping. The reporters near the front looked at their phones. The senator looked at his phone. The guests looked at their phones. I saw the face of the reporter from Channel 5 change. He looked at his screen, then he looked up at Victoria with shock. He whispered something to his cameraman. The camera swung away from Victoria and pointed directly at me. "What is happening?" Victoria asked. Her composure was cracking. She looked at Marcus. Marcus was looking at his phone, his face white as a sheet. The senator stood up. He was reading the email. His hands were shaking. He looked at his daughter with a mix of horror and fury. "Let him go," the senator shouted at the guards holding me. The guards hesitated. They looked at Victoria, then at the senator. The senator was the one who signed their paychecks. They let me go. I stood there in the middle of the aisle. I straightened my jacket. I didn't need a microphone anymore. The silence in the room was so heavy, you could hear a pin drop. "Victoria," I said. My voice was calm now. "You wanted to talk about family. You wanted to talk about the truth." I pointed to the giant screen behind her, where the charity logo was displayed. "Why don't we show them the real family video?" Jeremiah had done his part. He had forwarded the link to the tech booth. The tech guy,
A bored kid who hated his job and loved a scandal had clicked it. The screen flickered, the logo disappeared, and there was Nia. Her face filled the 20-foot screen. She was crying. She was terrified. "He has Marcus's eyes," she whispered to the entire ballroom. "I hid him in the closet," Victoria said. "She would kill him." The gasp from the crowd sucked the air out of the room. A woman in the front row dropped her champagne glass. It shattered. Victoria stood frozen at the podium. She looked small now. The silver dress didn't look like armor anymore. It looked like tinfoil. She looked at the crowd. She saw the judgment. She saw the disgust. She looked at me, and for the first time I saw fear. Real fear, not the fear of losing money. The fear of a caged animal realizing the door is open and the hunter is waiting. I smiled. "Happy birthday, Victoria," I whispered. The trap was sprung. The media was feeding, and the FBI was on the way. I looked at Marcus. He was still sitting there. He hadn't moved. He hadn't tried to stop it. He looked at me and gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. It was over, or so I thought. But a cornered animal bites, and Victoria wasn't done yet. She reached into her purse beneath the podium. I saw the glint of metal. "Gun!" I shouted, diving behind a table. Chaos erupted. The ballroom was a sea of black ties and glittering diamonds. The air smelled of expensive perfume and roasting meat. It was the smell of money. It was the smell of power. I stood at the entrance in my ill-fitting tuxedo that smelled of mothballs and rain. I felt the eyes of 500 people land on me. They looked at my scuffed work boots. They looked at the soot that was still smeared behind my ears from the fire. They looked at the bruises on my face. To them, I was a stain on their perfect white tablecloth. I was a disruption, a glitch in their perfectly curated evening. 2 security guards stepped in front of me. They were not the mercenaries from the alley. These were the hotel staff, big men in tight suits with earpieces. They looked at me with that specific mix of pity and annoyance that people reserve for the homeless. "Sir," one of them said, blocking my path with a massive arm, "this is a private event. You need to leave immediately." I did not step back. I did not look down. I stood my ground. "I am family," I said. My voice was rough from the smoke, but it was steady. The guard sighed. "Sir, please do not make a scene. Come with us quietly, or we will have to escort you out." He reached for my arm. His grip was firm. He was trying to be gentle, thinking I was just a confused old man who had wandered in off the street. I pulled my arm away. I took a deep breath. I filled my lungs with the cold air of the ballroom. "Victoria," I shouted. The name tore through the polite chatter like a gunshot. The string quartet stopped playing. The clinking of silverware stopped. 500 heads turned toward the stage. "Victoria!" I yelled again. "I brought you a gift." On the stage, Victoria froze. She was in the middle of a sentence about compassion. Her hand hovered near her throat. For a second, just a split second, I saw the mask slip. I saw the terror in her eyes. She knew who I was. She knew I should be dead in a burning house. But Victoria is a predator, and predators adapt. She saw the crowd looking at her. She saw the confusion on the senator's face. She saw the cameras from the news crews zooming in. If she panicked, she would look guilty. If she had me dragged out screaming, it would make a scene she couldn't control. So she did the only thing she could do. She smiled. It was a dazzling smile. A smile that showed all her teeth. A smile that didn't reach her eyes. She stepped away from the podium and walked to the edge of the stage. She picked up a handheld microphone. "Oh my goodness," she said, her voice dripping with fake concern. "It is Ezekiel." She turned to the crowd. "Ladies and gentlemen, please forgive the interruption. This is my father-in-law. Poor dear Ezekiel." She waved her hand at the guards. "Let him go. Please let him through. He is not dangerous. He is just confused." The guards stepped back, looking uncertain. Victoria looked at me. "Come here, Ezekiel," she called out, beckoning me like a dog. "Come up to the stage. We are all family here." I knew what she was doing. It was a brilliant move. By inviting me up, she was taking control of the narrative. She was going to frame me as the senile, grief-stricken old man. She was going to spin my anger as dementia. She was going to hug me, pat my head, and send me away to an institution with the crowd's blessing. She thought she was inviting a lamb to the slaughter. She didn't know she was inviting the butcher. I started walking. The aisle seemed to stretch on forever. It was the longest walk of my life. I walked past tables filled with people who ran this city. I saw a judge I recognized from the papers. I saw a banker who had denied my loan application 10 years ago. They watched me pass. They whispered behind their hands. "Look at him," they whispered. "So sad. He must be off his meds. Look at his shoes." I kept my head high. I didn't look at them. I looked straight ahead at the woman in the silver dress who had ordered the death of my daughter-in-law. I walked past the front table. Marcus was sitting there, my son. He was staring at his plate, his shoulders hunched. He couldn't even look at me. He was trembling. He knew what was coming, or maybe he didn't. Maybe he thought I was just going to yell and get arrested. He looked small. He looked broken. I didn't stop for him. He made his choice at the pier. I reached the stairs to the stage. My knees ached. My back screamed in protest. But I climbed them. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. I stood on the stage. The lights were blinding. The heat from the spotlights was intense. Victoria walked toward me. She opened her arms. She hugged me. It was a cold embrace. Her body was stiff. She smelled of expensive champagne and malice. She leaned in close so her cheek brushed mine. To the crowd, it looked like a tender greeting. But into my ear, she whispered words that would freeze hell over. "You stupid old man," she hissed. "You should have burned with the house. Now I am going to have you committed to the state asylum. You will never see daylight again." She pulled back, still smiling. She kept one hand on my shoulder, gripping it hard. Her fingernails dug into my flesh through the cheap fabric of the tuxedo. She turned to the audience. "Everyone," she said, her voice trembling with manufactured emotion. "This is Ezekiel Freeman. He has been having a very hard time lately. Since his wife died, well, his mind hasn't been the same." She looked at me with pity that was designed to destroy me. "He gets confused," she continued. "He imagines things. He thinks people are out to get him. It is a terrible disease. We have been trying to get him help. We have been trying to get him into a facility where he can be safe. But he keeps running away." The crowd murmured sympathetically. "Oh, poor woman," they thought, dealing with a crazy relative on her big night. Victoria squeezed my shoulder harder. "Ezekiel, why are you here?" she asked gently, holding the microphone to my face like a weapon. "Did you forget where you live? Do you need a ride to the hospital?" She was giving me an out. She was giving me a chance to play the role. If I mumbled, if I acted confused, she would have her security team guide me gently off stage and into a waiting police car. I looked out at the sea of faces. I saw the cameras. The red lights were glowing. Jeremiah had done his job. The world was watching. I looked at the senator. He was watching me intently. He was a smart man. He was looking at my eyes. And in my eyes, he didn't see dementia. He saw clarity. I reached out and took the microphone from Victoria's hand. She didn't want to let it go. We had a brief, silent struggle. But I have spent 40 years turning wrenches that didn't want to turn. My grip was iron. I took the mic. The feedback squealed for a second. "I am not confused, Victoria," I said. My voice boomed through the speakers. It was deep and resonant. It was the voice of a man who used to shout orders over the roar of diesel engines. Victoria's smile faltered. She took a half step back. "I know exactly where I live," I said. "I live at 402 East 4th Street. Or I did until 3 hours ago, when your security team threw a Molotov cocktail through my living room window." The crowd gasped. A ripple of shock went through the room. Victoria laughed. A nervous, high-pitched sound. "Oh, Ezekiel," she said, trying to grab the mic back. "See what I mean? He is hallucinating. Fire, violence. It is the dementia talking." I pulled the mic away from her reach. "Is it dementia?" I asked. "Is it dementia that I found my grandson Leo locked in a closet at the Serenity House facility tonight? The facility you own, Victoria." I saw the color drain from her face. She looked at the side of the stage, signaling frantically for the guards. "Cut the sound," she screamed. "Cut the mic." But the sound didn't cut. The tech guy in the booth was listening, or maybe he just wanted to hear the end of the story. I turned to the senator. "Senator Blackwell," I said, "you speak about family values. You speak about legacy. Do you know that you have a great-grandson?" The senator stood up. He knocked over his wine glass. A dark red stain spread across the white tablecloth. "What is he talking about, Victoria?" the senator demanded, his voice booming from the floor. "He is crazy, Daddy," Victoria shrieked. She wasn't the poised socialite anymore. She was a desperate child caught in a lie. "Security, get him off the stage, now!" 3 guards rushed the stage. They were coming fast. I knew I had about 10 seconds. 10 seconds before they tackled me. 10 seconds before they silenced me. I looked at Victoria. "I told you I brought a gift," I said. I reached into my pocket. I didn't pull out a weapon. I didn't pull out the marriage certificate. I pulled out the burner phone. I held it up to the light. "You paid Nia Jenkins $10,000 a month to hide your husband's bigamy," I shouted. "You paid her to hide the legitimate heir to the Freeman name, and when she asked for more, you had her killed." "Liar," Victoria screamed. She lunged at me. She clawed at my face. Her nails raked across my cheek, drawing blood. The crowd screamed. It was chaos. The guards were almost on me, but I didn't move. I didn't fight back. I just pointed to the giant screen behind us, the screen that was supposed to show the foundation's charity work. "Jeremiah," I yelled. "Now!" The screen went black, and then it flickered to life. It wasn't a charity video. It was a grainy video shot on a cheap phone in a motel room. Nia's face appeared, huge, tear-stained, terrified. "Zeke," her voice whispered through the massive speakers, echoing off the crystal chandeliers. "If you are watching this, it means I am dead." The guards stopped. They froze in their tracks. Everyone froze. Victoria turned around slowly to look at the screen. She looked like Lot's wife turning into a pillar of salt. "She threatened to kill him," the voice on the screen continued. "Victoria said if I ever told anyone that I was Marcus's legal wife, she would kill Leo." The silence in the room was absolute. It was the silence of a tomb. I looked at the senator. He was holding his chest. He looked like he was having a heart attack. I looked at Marcus. He had his head on the table. He was weeping. I looked at Victoria. She was staring at the screen. Her mouth was open. There was no way to spin this. There was no way to lie about this. It was her voice on the recording that followed. The recording I had captured in her office. "Sign the papers, Ezekiel, or you will die in prison." The audio played loud and clear. I looked at the camera crew. They were zooming in on Victoria's face. I lowered the microphone. "Happy anniversary, Victoria," I whispered. The spell broke. The room erupted. People were shouting. The senator was yelling. Police sirens were wailing outside. Victoria looked at me. Her eyes were black holes of hate. "You ruined everything," she screamed. She reached into her purse. I saw the glint of steel. She wasn't reaching for a phone. She wasn't reaching for a tissue. She was reaching for a small, pearl-handled pistol. "Gun!" I shouted. I dove behind the podium just as the first shot rang out. The sound of a gunshot inside a ballroom is not like the movies. It is deafening. It bounces off the marble floors and the crystal chandeliers, amplifying into a thunderclap that stops time. The bullet shattered the wooden seal of the podium inches from my head, sending splinters flying into my hair. I lay flat on the stage, pressing my cheek against the cold, hard floor. I could smell the carpet dust and the sharp metallic tang of gunpowder. Screams erupted from the crowd. 500 of the city's elite were scrambling, diving under tables, knocking over chairs and spilling wine that looked too much like blood. Victoria stood above me. She was panting. Her chest heaved beneath the silver gown. She held the small, pearl-handled pistol with both hands, but her grip was shaking. She pointed it down at me. Her eyes were wide and manic. She had crossed the line. She wasn't just a manipulator anymore. She was a killer in front of a live audience. "Stay down," she screamed, her voice cracking. "Stay down, or I swear to God I will finish it." I looked up at her barrel. I didn't move. I didn't beg, because I knew something she didn't. I knew that behind her, the massive screen that spanned the entire back wall of the stage was no longer black. Jeremiah had done it. The screen flickered to life. It was a blinding white light that cast Victoria's silhouette in sharp relief. She flinched, turning her head slightly, distracted by the sudden brightness. And then the sound began. It wasn't the polite classical music of the gala. It wasn't the smooth voice of a charity narrator. It was the sound of a woman crying. Deep, heart-wrenching sobs that echoed through the massive speaker system, filling every corner of the room. Victoria froze. The gun wavered in her hand. She turned slowly to look at the screen. The image was grainy, shaky, handheld footage from a cheap phone, but the face was unmistakable. It was Nia. She looked terrified. Her eyes were swollen. She was sitting on the edge of a motel bed, the same bed where they found her body. "My name is Nia Jenkins," the voice on the screen said. It was trembling but clear. If you are watching this, then I am dead, and if I am dead, it is because of her." Victoria let out a sound that was half gasp, half shriek. "No," she yelled. "Turn it off. Someone turn it off." She waved the gun at the tech booth at the back of the room. "Kill the feed," she screamed. But the tech booth was empty. Jeremiah had seen to that. Or maybe the technicians had just run away when the shooting started. The video continued. Nia held up a piece of paper to the camera. "She told me that if I ever tried to claim my rights as Marcus's wife, she would kill my son," Nia said. Tears rolled down her cheeks on the screen. "She said she has men watching us. She said accidents happen to little boys all the time." The ballroom was silent now. The screaming had stopped. The guests were peeking out from under the tables. The waiters were freezing in place. Every eye was locked on the screen. Victoria stood there paralyzed. She couldn't shoot a projection. She couldn't kill a ghost. Then the image changed. It was a document. High resolution. Clear as day. It was the marriage certificate. The camera zoomed in on the date. October 12th, 2013. Then it cut to a split screen. On the left was the marriage certificate between Marcus and Nia. On the right was the wedding photo of Marcus and Victoria, dated 3 years later. The voice of a news anchor, the one Jeremiah had contacted, cut in over the audio system. "Breaking news. Evidence suggests that Marcus Freeman committed bigamy. His marriage to Victoria Blackwell is legally void." The crowd gasped. It was a collective intake of breath that sucked the oxygen out of the room. I saw the senator. He was standing near the front table. His face was a mask of purple rage. He was looking at the screen and then at his daughter. He understood immediately. The trust fund, the morality clause, the billions of dollars. It was all gone. His legacy was built on a lie. But we weren't done yet. The screen went black again. Then came the audio. It was recorded just yesterday. The sound quality was perfect. It was the recording from my watch inside Marcus's office. "Sign the papers, Ezekiel," Victoria's voice sneered through the speakers, "or you will die in prison." Then another clip. This one was from the phone call I recorded when Marcus betrayed me at the pier. "I have the security team ready," Victoria's voice said, cold and calculating. "Burn the house. Make sure the old man is inside. I want him gone." The word "gone" echoed around the room. Victoria dropped the gun. It clattered onto the stage floor with a dull thud. She looked at her hands. She looked at the crowd. She looked for an ally. She looked for anyone who would help her. She looked at Marcus. Marcus was sitting at the table, his head in his hands, sobbing into the tablecloth. He was broken. He couldn't help her. She looked at her father. "Daddy," she whimpered. Her voice was small now, like a little girl caught stealing. "Daddy, please. It is a fake. It is a deep fake. They made it up." The senator walked up to the stage. He moved slowly. He looked like he had aged 20 years in 20 seconds. He stood at the bottom of the stairs looking up at his daughter. He didn't climb up. He didn't offer her a hand. He looked at me. I picked myself up off the floor. I dusted off my tuxedo. I didn't pick up the gun. I didn't need it. I looked at the senator. "Your daughter tried to burn me alive tonight," I said. My voice was calm, because I wanted to save my grandson. The senator closed his eyes. He took a deep breath. Then he looked at Victoria. "You are finished," he said. His voice was low, but in the silence, everyone heard it. "Daddy," Victoria pleaded, reaching out a hand. "Do not call me that," the senator roared. His voice cracked with fury. "You are not my daughter. You are a monster. You lied to me. You stole from the foundation, and you tried to kill a child." He turned his back on her. "I have no daughter," he said to the room. Victoria let out a scream. It wasn't a scream of fear. It was a scream of pure rage. She had lost. The money, the status, the family name. It was all dissolving like sugar in hot water. She looked at me. Her eyes were wild. "I should have killed you," she hissed, lunging for the gun on the floor. But she was too slow. From the side of the stage, a massive shape emerged from the shadows. It was Big T. He had come in through the back just like I asked. He stepped onto the stage, moving faster than a man his size should be able to move. He put one giant foot on the gun just as Victoria's hand reached for it. She looked up at him, terrified. "I wouldn't do that, ma'am," Big T rumbled. Then the doors at the back of the room burst open. "FBI! Nobody move!" Dozens of agents in tactical gear poured into the ballroom. They had their weapons drawn. The local police were with them, but the feds were leading. They had received the email. They had heard the evidence. Victoria stood up. She looked around. She was surrounded. She looked at the guests, her friends, her social circle. They were looking at her with disgust. A woman in a diamond necklace turned her head away. A man who had toasted her 10 minutes ago was filming her with his phone. The facade was gone. The angel in the silver dress was revealed to be a demon. 2 agents rushed the stage. They grabbed Victoria's arms.
"Get your hands off me," she shrieked, kicking and spitting. "Do you know who I am? My father is a senator." "Not anymore," the senator said from the floor. He was speaking to an agent. "Take her away. I will cooperate fully. I want everything exposed." The agents handcuffed Victoria. They dragged her toward the stairs. She passed me. She stopped fighting for a second. She looked me in the eye. "You are nothing," she spat. "You are just a dirty old mechanic." I looked at her. I didn't feel angry. I felt pity. "I am a grandfather," I said, "and that is something you will never understand." They dragged her away. She was screaming threats, screaming for lawyers, screaming for mercy. Then the agents went for Marcus. He didn't fight. He stood up and held out his wrists. He looked at me as they cuffed him. "Take care of Leo, Dad," he whispered. I didn't say anything. I just nodded. It was the only forgiveness I could offer him. The room was buzzing with chaos. Reporters were shouting questions. Flashes were blinding, but I tuned it all out. I looked toward the back of the room, near the kitchen entrance. Jeremiah was there, leaning against a pillar, smiling. Larry was there, giving me a nervous wave. And standing between them, holding Jeremiah's hand, was a small boy in dirty pajamas, wearing an oversized tuxedo jacket. Leo. He had seen it all. He had seen the bad lady taken away. He had seen the truth come out. I walked down the stairs. The crowd parted for me. They didn't look at me with pity anymore. They looked at me with respect. They looked at me with fear. I walked straight to Leo. I knelt down. "Is the bad lady gone, Grandpa?" he asked. "Yes, Leo," I said, pulling him into a hug. "She is gone. She can never hurt you again." He buried his face in my neck. "Can we go home now?" he asked. I thought about the charred remains of my house on 4th Street. I thought about the ashes and the ruin. But then I looked at my friends. I looked at the boy in my arms. "Yes," I said, tears finally spilling down my soot-stained cheeks. "Yes, Leo, we are going home." It wasn't a building. It was this. It was us. I picked him up and walked out of the ballroom. I walked past the senator, who was sitting with his head in his hands. I walked past the cameras. I walked out into the cool night air. The rain had stopped. The stars were out. I was Zeke Freeman. I was 73 years old. I had no house. I had no money. But I was the richest man in the world. The doors to the ballroom didn't just open. They were kicked in. It was a sound that cracked the tension in the room like a hammer hitting a sheet of glass. I have heard police raids before. In my neighborhood, they happen with shouting and confusion and fear. But this was different. This was precision. This was the federal government. Dozens of agents poured into the room. They wore navy blue jackets with those 3 yellow letters on the back, FBI. They moved like water, flowing around the tables, securing the exits, swarming the stage. The local police officers, the ones Victoria had bought and paid for, stepped back. They knew their jurisdiction ended where the federal crimes began. They holstered their weapons and looked at their shoes, knowing that they were probably next on the indictment list. I stood up from behind the podium. My knees cracked. The adrenaline that had kept me moving for 48 hours was starting to fade, leaving behind a deep, bone-heavy exhaustion. But I didn't let it show. I stood tall. Victoria was still on the floor where Big T had stopped her. She looked up at the agents surrounding her. For a moment, she looked confused. She looked at them like they were catering staff who had brought the wrong order. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded, trying to stand up. Her silver dress was torn at the hem. Her hair was coming loose from its perfect bun. "This is a private event. Get out of my face." A tall agent with a face carved out of granite stepped forward. He didn't blink. He didn't care about her dress, or her name, or the senator standing 5 feet away. "Victoria Freeman," he said, his voice cutting through the murmurs of the crowd. "You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder,
money laundering, wire fraud, and kidnapping. Victoria laughed. It was a shrill, broken sound. Kidnapping, she shrieked. I am a Blackwell. My father is Senator Blackwell. You cannot arrest me. I will have your badge. I will have your job. I will have you working security at a mall by tomorrow morning. The agent didn't even flinch. He just pulled a pair of steel handcuffs from his belt. Turn around and place your hands behind your back, he said. That was when she snapped. The reality finally hit her. The money wasn't going to save her. The name wasn't going to save her. The walls she had built to keep the world out were now closing in to crush her. She let out a scream that didn't sound human. It sounded like an animal caught in a trap, chewing its own leg off to escape. No, she screamed. No, she lunged. She didn't lunge at the agent. She didn't lunge at her father. She lunged at me. Her eyes were wide and white. Her teeth were bared. She looked like a demon. She wanted to hurt the thing that had destroyed her world. She wanted to tear me apart with her bare hands. I will kill you, she screamed, reaching for my throat. You dirty old man. You ruined everything. I didn't move. I didn't flinch. I just looked at her. Big T moved to intercept her, but the agents were faster. Two of them grabbed her by the arms. She kicked and thrashed. She spit at me. The saliva landed on my tuxedo jacket. Get off me, she yelled. Daddy, help me. Daddy, make them stop. She looked toward the senator. He was standing by the front table. His face was pale, almost gray. He looked at his daughter, the girl he had raised in palaces and private schools. He saw the madness in her eyes. He saw the truth on the screen behind her. He turned his back. He adjusted his tie, picked up his glass of water, and turned away from her. The silence of his rejection was louder than her screams. Victoria collapsed. Her legs gave out. The agents dragged her up. They clicked the cuffs onto her wrists. The sound was final. Click, click. They dragged her across the stage. She was sobbing now, ugly, heaving sobs. You are nothing, she screamed back at me as they hauled her down the stairs. You are garbage, Ezekiel. You will burn for this. I watched her go. I felt nothing. No anger, no joy. Just the satisfaction of a mechanic who has finally removed a rusted, broken part from a machine so it can work again. Then the agents turned their attention to the table, to Marcus. My son hadn't moved. He was sitting in his chair, his hands resting on the white tablecloth. He was staring at the centerpiece, a vase of white lilies. He looked like a statue. An agent approached him. Mr Freeman, stand up. Marcus blinked. He stood up slowly. He moved like an old man, like his joints were rusted shut. He held out his wrists. He knew the drill. He knew it was over. He didn't look at the agent. He didn't look at his wife being dragged out the door. He looked at me. Our eyes met across the ballroom. I saw the boy I used to carry on my shoulders. I saw the teenager I taught to drive. I saw the young man who graduated college with dreams of changing the world. And I saw the coward who let a woman kill his wife. Dad, he whispered. His voice was so quiet I had to read his lips. Dad, please. He took a step toward me. The agent grabbed his shoulder, but Marcus ignored him. He looked at me with desperate, pleading eyes. I didn't know, Dad. I didn't know she would go this far. You have to tell them. You have to tell them I was scared. I can turn state's witness. I can help. Please, Dad, do something. The room was watching. The cameras were zooming in. This was the moment. The father and the son. The redemption arc. I walked down the stairs from the stage. My boots felt heavy on the plush carpet. I walked up to him. The agent stepped back, allowing us a moment. He respected the grief of a father, even if he had to arrest the son. I stood in front of Marcus. I was close enough to smell the fear on him, close enough to see the tears tracking through the expensive makeup Victoria had made him wear for the cameras. You knew, Marcus, I said softly. You knew everything. You knew when you signed the papers. You knew when you took the money. You knew when you let them take Leo. But I am your son, he sobbed. I am your flesh and blood. You cannot let them take me to prison. I won't survive in there, Dad. I am not like you. I am not strong like you. No, I said. You are not. I looked at his left hand. He was wearing a gold wedding band. It wasn't the platinum diamond-encrusted ring Victoria had given him. He had taken that off earlier, probably to play the victim. He was wearing the simple gold band I had given him on the day he married Nia. It was my father's ring. It was thick, scratched gold. It had survived the Great Depression. It had survived World War II. It had survived 40 years on the docks on my finger before I gave it to him. It was a ring that meant honor. It meant loyalty. It meant that a Freeman keeps his word. Seeing that ring on his finger made me sick. It felt like a desecration. I reached out and took his hand. Marcus looked hopeful. He thought I was holding his hand to comfort him. He squeezed my fingers. "Dad," he whimpered. I didn't squeeze back. I gripped the ring. Marcus's eyes went wide. "Dad, what are you doing?" I pulled. It was tight. His hands were swollen from the alcohol and the crying. But I didn't care. I twisted it. I pulled hard. "Ow! Dad, stop! You are hurting me!" "The pain you feel now is nothing compared to the pain you caused," I said. I gave one final yank. The ring slid off over his knuckle. Marcus stared at his naked finger. He looked like he had lost a limb. "That ring belonged to a man who worked himself to death to feed his family," I said, holding the gold circle up to the light. "It belonged to a man who never told a lie in 80 years. I looked Marcus in the eye. "You don't deserve to wear it. You don't deserve the history in this metal. And you don't deserve the name Freeman." I turned around. A waiter was standing nearby, holding a silver tray with a half-empty bottle of champagne and some crumpled napkins. There was a small silver trash bucket attached to his cart. I walked over to the cart. "Dad, don't," Marcus screamed. "Don't do it." I held the ring over the trash bucket. I thought about the day I gave it to him. I thought about the pride I felt. I let it go. Clink. It hit the bottom of the metal bin. It landed among the used napkins and the food scraps. Trash, just like the life he had chosen. I turned back to the agent. "He is all yours," I said. The agent nodded solemnly. He spun Marcus around and cuffed him. Marcus started screaming. Not words, just sounds. The sounds of a child who realizes the dark has finally come, and there is no nightlight to save him. "Dad, don't leave me. Dad!" I turned my back. It was the hardest thing I have ever done. Harder than walking into the fire. Harder than facing Victoria's gun. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to turn around to save him, to hire a lawyer to fight for him. That is what a father does. But a father also teaches consequences, and this was the final lesson. I walked away. The agents led him out the side door. I didn't watch him go. I kept my eyes forward. I walked toward the back of the room where my real family was waiting. Big T was standing there, his tuxedo jacket ripped at the shoulder from where he had tackled Victoria. He looked like a battered mount. Jeremiah was there, putting his phone away, a smile of grim satisfaction on his face. Larry was wiping his eyes with a handkerchief, and in the middle of them, holding on to Jeremiah's leg, was Leo. I walked up to them. The crowd parted for me. They whispered, but I didn't hear them. I only heard the beat of my own heart. Leo looked up at me. "Is my daddy gone?" he asked. I knelt down. I looked into those amber eyes, Marcus's eyes. But looking at them now, I realized they weren't Marcus's eyes. They were my father's eyes. They were Freeman eyes. Marcus had just borrowed them for a while. Now they belonged to someone worthy. "Yes, Leo," I said. "He is gone. He has to go away for a long time to think about what he did." Leo nodded. He seemed to accept this. He had lived a life where men disappeared. "Are you going away too?" he asked. I reached out and picked him up. I held him tight against my chest. I could feel his little heart beating against mine. "No," I said. "I am not going anywhere. I am right here." I looked at my friends. "Let's go home," I said. "We don't have a home, Zeke," Larry reminded me gently. "The house is ash." I looked at the three men who had risked everything for me. I looked at the boy in my arms. I looked around the ballroom at the ruins of the gala, the spilled wine, the overturned chairs, the shattered glass. "We have a truck," I said. "We have $5,000. And we have each other." I adjusted Leo on my hip. "That is more of a home than anyone in this room has." I walked toward the exit. The cameras flashed one last time, capturing the image of the old mechanic carrying the child out of the wreckage. I didn't look back at the senator. I didn't look back at the stage. I walked out into the night. The air was cool and clean. The rain had washed the city streets. It was over. The fire was out. Now it was time to rebuild. The water on the lake is glass still this morning. The mist is rising off the surface like a ghost, vanishing into the sunlight. I sit on the end of the dock with my legs dangling over the edge. Next to me sits a small boy with a fishing rod that is too big for his hands. But he holds it steady. He does not fidget. He does not complain about the cold. He watches the bobber with the intensity of a hawk. It has been 6 months since the night at the Plaza Hotel. 6 months since the sirens and the cameras and the handcuffs. The world moves on fast. The newspapers found new scandals. The senator resigned in disgrace and retreated to a private island to hide from his shame. The V&M Foundation was dissolved, its assets frozen and redistributed to real charities. But for me, the world did not move on. It changed. It stopped spinning on an axis of grief and started spinning on an axis of hope. Leo tugs on my sleeve. "Grandpa," he whispers, "I think I have a bite." I look at the red and white bobber dancing on the water.
"Wait for it, Leo," I say softly. "Patience. Let him take it." He waits. He bites his lip. Then the bobber goes under. "Now," I say. He pulls back. The rod bends. He reels it in his little hands, moving in a blur. A small perch breaks the surface, splashing silver droplets into the air. "I caught it!" Leo screams, his face lighting up with a smile that could outshine the sun. "I caught it, Grandpa." I help him unhook the fish and release it back into the water. We do not fish for food today. We fish for the peace of it. I look at him and I think about Marcus. I tried to teach Marcus to fish on this same lake 40 years ago. He hated it. He wanted to go home and play video games. He wanted instant gratification. Leo is different. Leo has his mother's spirit. He has Nia's quiet strength. Marcus is currently serving the first year of a 10-year sentence at a minimum security federal prison. He writes to me every week. The letters arrive on Tuesdays. I know his handwriting. It is shaky and small. I do not open them. I have a shoebox in the closet where I keep them. Maybe one day when Leo is a grown man, he can decide if he wants to read them. But for me, that door is closed. I forgave him in my heart, because holding on to hate is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. But forgiveness does not mean access. He made his choice. He chose the money over the blood. Victoria did not get off so easy. The jury did not like the recordings. They did not like the video of a terrified mother. She got 25 years without the possibility of parole. Her lawyers tried to plead insanity, but the judge saw what I saw. Pure, calculated evil. She is rotting in a cell somewhere, and I hope every time she closes her eyes, she sees Nia's face. I hear a truck pulling up the gravel driveway behind us. I turn around. It is Big T and Jeremiah. Larry is in the back seat. They come over every Sunday for a barbecue. We are not just friends anymore. We are a unit. Big T gets out carrying a cooler the size of a coffin. He has taken over the role of Leo's personal bodyguard and jungle gym. Larry brings toys he has fixed or modified. Last week, he brought a remote control car that can go 40 miles an hour. Jeremiah brings the paperwork for the Nia Jenkins Trust. I used the settlement money from the lawsuit not to buy a mansion, but to rebuild. My house on 4th Street is rising from the ashes. It is going to be stronger this time. Brick instead of wood, steel-reinforced doors, and a room for Leo painted whatever color he wants. The rest of the money went to the foundation. We help young mothers who are trying to escape abusive situations. We help women who are being silenced by powerful men. We give them a voice, just like I gave Nia a voice that night. "Hey Zeke," Big T booms his voice, scaring the birds out of the trees. The charcoal is lit. "Are you coming to cook, or are you going to let the boy catch all the fish?" I stand up. My knees still ache when it rains, but today the sun is warm. I pick up Leo. He is getting heavier every day. He smells of lake water and sunshine. "We are coming," I say. I walk up the hill toward my friends, toward the smell of burgers and the sound of laughter. I lost a lot in this war. I lost my son. I lost the naive belief that the world is a fair place. I lost the last few years of my quiet retirement. But I look at the boy in my arms. I look at the men waiting for me by the grill. I gained something much more valuable. I gained the truth. I put Leo down and watch him run toward Big T, who scoops him up like a feather. I stand there for a moment, looking at the foundation of my new house. The concrete is fresh and wet. I took a stick earlier and wrote something in the wet cement in the corner where the porch will be. Nia and Coretta, watching over us. I am 74 years old. My hands are scarred. My heart has been broken and put back together with rivets and steel. But I am still standing. The sun is high, the fish are biting, and for the first time in a long time, I am not afraid of the dark. Because I know that when the night comes,
I have my own light to guide me home. In the twilight of my life, I learned that blood does not make you family. Loyalty does. I spent years mourning a son who was physically alive, but morally dead, only to find salvation in a grandson I never knew existed. We often cling to toxic branches of our family tree, afraid to prune them, thinking the tree will die. But sometimes you have to cut off the rotten parts so the roots can breathe again. I lost a son to greed, but I gained a legacy in truth. A man is not defined by what he builds, but by what he refuses to destroy. This has been the story of how I fought a billion-dollar empire with a wrench and the truth. If you enjoyed this journey, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments where you are listening from, and if you have ever had to make a hard choice to protect your family. Your support helps me tell more stories like this one. Until next time, stay strong and never stop fighting for what is right.